In the quiet village of Ashburn, a stolen locket sparks a chilling mystery that even Hercule Poirot cannot ignore. Why would a thief target a retired opera singer's cherished keepsake? What secrets does it hide, secrets worth killing for? As Poirot unravels a web of deception, from ghostly footsteps to a murderous composer's lost symphony, he uncovers a truth that could shatter a family or heal it. Will the locket's painful past destroy those it binds, or will Poirot's little gray cells bring light to the shadows? The clock is ticking, and the truth sings a deadly tune. Chapter 5. The Gala's Hidden Dance. The night air in Ashburn was thick with the scent of jasmine and anticipation. The manor's gardens transformed into a glittering stage for the village's annual gala. Lanterns swayed gently in the breeze, casting golden pools of light across the cobblestone paths, while laughter and the clinking of champagne glasses spilled from the open doors of Ashburn Manor. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed in a tailored evening suit, his mustache waxed to perfection, moved through the crowd with the grace of a man who knew how to blend into elegance while observing every detail. His eyes, sharp as a hawk's, darted from face to face, searching for the masked guest who had slipped the cryptic note to Mr. Harrow, the antiques dealer, in the previous chapter's climactic moment. The note the locket sings tonight burned in his mind, a tantalizing clue that promised to unravel the mystery of Madame Elise de Bois's stolen locket, a cherished artifact tied to her late husband's legacy, and, Poirot suspected, a darker truth. The manor's grand ballroom was a spectacle of opulence, its chandeliers dripping with crystal, their light refracting across the polished parquet floor. Guests in elaborate masked peacocks, jesters, and gilded phantoms whirled in a waltz, their movements synchronized to the lilting strains of a string quartet. Poirot, ever the outsider, stood near a marble pillar, sipping a glass of sparkling water to maintain his clarity. He had no taste for champagne tonight. His little gray cells demanded sobriety. The gala, he knew, was not merely a celebration, but a stage for deception, where the elusive figure known as the maestro might reveal themselves only through a careless glance or a whispered word. His attention was drawn to a young woman, gliding across the dance floor, her auburn hair cascading in soft waves beneath a silver mask adorned with sapphires. Clara Dubois, Elise's niece, was a vision in a gown of midnight blue, her movements graceful, yet tinged with a nervous energy that Poirot's trained eye could not miss. She danced with a tall, suave stranger, his black mask obscuring all but a sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes. Their closeness was more than polite. Their hands lingered too long, their steps too intimate for mere acquaintances. Poirot's instincts flared. Clara, who had arrived at the manor only days before the locket's disappearance, had been a peripheral figure in his investigation, grieving, quiet, and seemingly devoted to her aunt. Yet now, her animated whispers with this stranger suggested a hidden agenda. Poirot adjusted his bow tie and moved closer, weaving through the crowd with the precision of a chess master positioning a knight. He positioned himself near a velvet-curtained alcove, close enough to observe without being noticed. The music swelled, a crescendo of violins, and Clara's laughter rang out, bright but brittle, as if masking unease. The stranger leaned in, his lips brushing her ear, and Poirot caught a fragment of their conversation. The locket, not safe. The words were faint, drowned by the music, but they were enough to set his mind racing. Was Clara complicit in the theft? Or was she, like Victor the gardener, a pawn in a larger scheme orchestrated by the maestro? As the waltz ended, Clara excused herself, her gloved hand brushing the stranger's arm before she slipped toward the manor's west wing. Poirot followed, his steps silent on the plush carpets, his senses attuned to every detail: the flicker of a candle, the rustle of a guest silk gown, the faint scent of cigar smoke trailing from a nearby room. Clara's path led to the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound tomes and dominated by a massive oak desk. The door was ajar, and Poirot paused outside, his ear pressed to the gap. Inside, Clara's voice was low, urgent, tinged with fear. "You don't understand, Julian," she said, her words sharp as cut glass. "The locket isn't just a trinket. It's cursed tied to his death. We don't find it, we're all in danger." The man Julian Poirot noted replied in a smooth, controlled tone. "Clara, you're letting your aunt's stories get to you. It's a piece of jewelry, nothing more. We sell it, we split the money, and we leave this wretched village behind." Tiro's heart quickened. Clara's fear seemed genuine, but Julian's dismissal was too calculated, his voice laced with a greed that belied his charm. Poirot slipped inside, his presence unnoticed as he hid behind a towering bookshelf. The library was dimly lit, a single candelabrum casting long shadows across the walls. Clara paced, her mask now discarded, revealing a face pale with worry. Julian stood by the desk, his posture relaxed, but his eyes darting to the door, as if expecting an interruption. "It's not just about money," Clara insisted, her voice breaking. "Uncle Morris wrote about it in his diary. The locket holds something he died for. The maestro has it." "Enough about the maestro," Julian snapped, his composure cracking. "Sound like one of those village gossips, spinning tales of ghosts and curses." "Give me the page, Clara. If there's truth to it, I'll handle it." Clara hesitated, then reached into her reticule and produced a torn sheet of paper, its edges frayed as if ripped from a book. Poirot's fingers twitched, eager to examine it, but he remained still, his breath shallow. Clara handed the page to Julian, who scanned it quickly, his brow furrowing. "This is nonsense," he muttered, but his tone lacked conviction. "A fatal composition? What does that even mean?" Poirot could no longer restrain himself. He stepped from the shadows, his voice calm but commanding. "It means, monsieur, that you are meddling in matters far graver than a simple theft. I am Hercule Poirot, and I would very much like to see that page." Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, while Julian spun around, his mask still in place, obscuring his expression. For a moment, silence hung heavy, broken only by the distant strains of the quartet. Then Julian laughed, a hollow sound that echoed in the vast room. "Poirot, the detective," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Tachut. Be taller. This is a private conversation, sir. Kindly leave." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of amusement rather than offense. "Monsieur, I do not leave when the truth is at stake. Mademoiselle Clara, you spoke of a curse of your uncle's death. The locket, I presume, is more than a sentimental keepsake. Tell me, what does this page reveal?" Clara's eyes darted between Poirot and Julian, her loyalty torn. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping. "It's from Uncle Morris's diary," she said softly. "He wrote it the night he died. It mentions the locket in Squee, a composition, something he called Lament for the Lost. He said it was dangerous, that it could ruin everything." Poirot extended his hand, his gaze steady. "Mademoiselle, s'il vous plaît." Julian stepped forward, his hand tightening around the paper, but Clara was quicker. She snatched it from him and handed it to Poirot, her eyes pleading. "Please, Monsieur Poirot, Aunt Elise is suffering. If this can help find the locket, I want you to have it." Poirot took the page, his fingers brushing the worn parchment. The handwriting was elegant but hurried, as if written in a moment of desperation. He read aloud, his voice measured, each word carrying weight. "The locket is my confession, my curse. Within it lies the truth of my sin, hidden in the notes of lament for the lost. If it is found, my legacy will crumble, and Elise will never forgive me. The maestro knows it will stop at nothing." Poirot's mind raced, piecing together the fragments. Maurice Dubois, Elise's husband, had been a composer of renown, his music celebrated across Europe. Yet this diary entry suggested a secret so damning it had led to his death, poisoned. Poirot now suspected, rather than a heart attack, as the village believed. The locket, with its sapphire heart, was no mere heirloom. It was a key to a hidden truth, perhaps a coded message or a physical object concealed within. Ain't the maestro, the shadowy figure orchestrating the theft, was not merely a thief, but a blackmailer, wielding Morris's secret like a weapon. He turned to Clara, his expression softening. "Mademoiselle, why did you not come to me sooner? Your aunt trusts me, and I am here to help." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "I was afraid. Julian said we could find the locket ourselves, sell it, and protect Aunt Elise from the truth. But now, I think he's working with someone else, someone dangerous." Julian's face darkened, his mask slipping to reveal a flicker of panic. "Clara, don't be foolish. You're accusing me of enough," Monsieur Poirot interrupted, his voice like steel. "You will explain yourself later. For now, I suggest you return to the gala. I have questions for you, but they will wait. Mademoiselle Clara, you will accompany me to your aunt's side. We must ensure her safety." Julian hesitated, then stormed out, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Clara followed Poirot, her face a mask of guilt and fear. As they re-entered the ballroom, the music had shifted to a lively mazurka. The atmosphere felt heavier, as if the manor itself sensed the approaching storm. Elise sat in a corner, her frail form draped in a shawl, her eyes scanning the crowd. When she saw Clara and Poirot, her face lit up, then faltered. "Monsieur Poirot, is something wrong?" she asked, her voice trembling. Poirot smiled reassuringly, though his mind was far from calm. "Madame, all is under control. But I must ask, did your husband ever speak of a composition called Lament for the Lost?" Elise's hand tightened on her cane, her knuckles white. "Yes," she whispered. "It was his final work. He never performed it, never showed it to anyone. He said it was too personal." "Why you ask?" Poirot chose his words carefully. "It may be the key to finding your locket, madame, and to understanding why it was taken." Kayla continued, oblivious to the drama unfolding in its shadows. Poirot escorted Clara and Elise to a private parlor where he could question them further without prying eyes. Clara recounted her discovery of the diary page, hidden in a book of poetry Morris had loved. She admitted to confiding in Julian, a childhood friend who had recently returned to Ashburn after years abroad. His charm had disarmed her. Damned assistance on selling the locket had raised her suspicions. Poirot listened, his mind weaving a tapestry of motives and secrets. The locket, he deduced, was not merely valuable for its jewels, but for what it concealed a secret tied to Maurice's lament for the lost. The maestro, whether Julian or another, sought it not for profit, but for power, to wield Morris's shame against Elise or her family. The diary page, now safely in Poirot's pocket, was a satisfying clue, tangible link to the composer's past, the promise to unlock the next phase of the mystery. As the clock struck midnight, the gala reached its peak, fireworks bursting over the gardens in a cascade of light. Poirot stood by the parlor window, watching the display, his thoughts as intricate as the patterns in the sky. Clara's revelation had shifted the investigation, pointing him toward Maurice's hidden life and the locket's true purpose. But Julian's role remained unclear. Was he a greedy opportunist or a pawn of the maestro? And where was the locket now, if not already in the hands of the mastermind? Poirot turned to Clara, his voice gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle, you have done well to trust me. But you must tell me everything about this Julian. Where did you meet him tonight? What did he promise you?" Clara swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. "He was waiting for me outside the manor before the gala began. He said he had a buyer, someone who would pay a fortune for the locket. but he wouldn't tell me who. He just kept saying we had to act quickly before the maestro found out. Poirot's eyes narrowed. In this spire, did he describe them? Clara shook her head. No, only that they were powerful, someone who could ruin us if we didn't cooperate. I thought he was trying to protect me, but now I'm not sure. Lise, silent until now, spoke up, her voice steady despite her frailty. Monsieur Poirot, my husband was a good man, but he had secrets. I never asked about them out of love. Perhaps I should have. If the locket holds his shame, I want to know it, no matter how painful. Poirot nodded, his heart heavy with empathy. Madame, the truth is often painful, but it is also liberating. I will find your locket, and I will uncover the truth behind your husband's death. This, I promise. The maestro wall were connected, and the diary page was the key to the next step. As he slipped it into his pocket, he felt the weight of Elise's trust, Clara's fear, and the looming presence of an enemy who would stop at nothing to keep the locket's secret buried. The dance of the gala had ended, but Poirot's pursuit of the truth was only beginning, a relentless waltz toward justice. Chapter 9. The maestro's final bow. The air in Ashbourne Manor's music room hung heavy with anticipation, as if the very walls held their breath. The grand piano, its ebony surface gleaming under the chandelier's soft glow, stood silent at the room's center, a mute witness to the secrets it had guarded for years. The room was a cathedral of memories, its high ceilings adorned with intricate plasterwork, its tall windows draped in burgundy velvet that filtered the late afternoon light into a warm, golden haze. Hercule Poirot stood near the piano, his small, meticulous frame a stark contrast to the grandeur around him. His mustache, impeccably groomed, twitched slightly as he surveyed the assembled company, his sharp green eyes darting from face to face, reading the flickers of fear, guilt, and curiosity that danced across them. Before him stood the suspects, each a piece in the intricate puzzle he had labored to assemble. Clara, Lisa's niece, her youthful face pale and taut, her fingers twisting the hem of her silk scarf. Mr. Harrow, the antique dealer, his nervous eyes darting to the exits as beads of sweat glistened on his brow. Lord Langley, his aristocratic poise faltering under Poirot's scrutiny, his hands clasped tightly behind his back. And Elise Dubois, herself, the retired opera singer, frail yet regal, seated in a high-backed chair, her trembling hands clutching a lace handkerchief. The locket, its sapphire heart catching the light, rested on a velvet cushion atop the piano, a silent accusation that drew every eye. Poirot's voice, when he spoke, was calm but commanding, cutting through the tense silence like a blade. Madame, messieurs, he began, his French accent lending a musical cadence to his words. We are gathered here to unmask a truth that has long been hidden in the shadows of this manor. The locket, this cherished relic of Madame Dubois, is no mere trinket. It is the key to a crime of greed, of betrayal, and of murder. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Harrow shifted uncomfortably, and Langley's jaw tightened. Lisa's eyes, clouded with grief, fixed on the locket as if seeing it anew. Poirot paced slowly, his polished shoes clicking softly on the parquet floor, his hands clasped behind his back. The vanishing of the locket, he continued, was but the first note in a symphony of deception. To understand its melody, we must return to the composer himself, Maurice Dubois, whose genius filled this room with music, and whose death was no accident. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The room seemed to shrink, the air growing denser, as the suspects leaned forward, hanging on his every syllable. Poirot's method was deliberate, theatrical even, but never without purpose. He knew the power of a well-timed pause, its way it could unravel the guilty as surely as a confession. Let us begin with the facts, he said, turning to face Clara. Mademoiselle Clara, you believed the locket held secrets about your uncle's death. You spoke of a curse, did you not? A notion born from a torn diary page, which hinted at a fatal composition. But your suspicions, while heartfelt, were misguided. The locket's true secret was not a curse, but a truth wand that someone in this room sought to bury. Clara's eyes widened, her lips parting as if to protest, but Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. Patience, mademoiselle, a will be revealed. He turned to Harold, whose fingers fidgeted with the buttons of his waistcoat. Monsieur Harold, you played your part as the dealer, fencing stolen goods for a figure known only as the maestro. You claimed ignorance, but your ledger told a different tale of greed, of transactions orchestrated by a mind far more cunning than your own. Harold's face flushed, his voice a stammer. I told you everything, Monsieur Poirot. I only followed orders. The maestro, he threatened me. Oui, monsieur, and we shall meet this maestro soon enough, Poirot said, his tone cool but unyielding. He pivoted to Lord Langley, whose aristocratic composure was beginning to crack. Lord Langley, you were the intermediary, were you not? The glove monogrammed with L betrayed you, as did the smudges on the piano key, smudges that matched those in your own study. You had access to this manor, and you used it to serve the maestro's ends. Langley's eyes narrowed, his voice low and controlled. You have no proof, Poirot. A glove, smudges. These are trifles. Trifles, monsieur. Poirot's smile was sharp, almost predatory. Poirot does not deal in trifles. Locket, recovered from your safe, speaks louder than your denials. But you too were a pawn, manipulated by a master whose identity we now approach. T turned at last to Elise, his expression softening. Madame Dubois, your loss has been the heart of this mystery. The locket, a gift from your beloved Morris, held more than sentiment. It contained a microfilm, a fragment of your husband's, well, hidden within its sapphire heart. A will that exposed a crime, a betrayal that cost him his life. Lisa's breath caught, her handkerchief crumpling in her hands. Maurice, his will, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of grief and dawning realization. We, Madame Poirot said gently, but to understand the full truth, we must retrace the steps of this dark symphony. Poirot began to weave the narrative, his voice steady and deliberate, painting a vivid picture of the events that had unfolded in Ashburn Manor. He spoke of Maurice Dubois, composer whose brilliance was matched only by his secrecy. Years ago, Maurice had crafted a symphony, Lament for the Lost. Its notes encoded with a message that pointed to a hidden vault beneath the manor's wine cellar. Within that vault, Poirot had found letters penned in Maurice's elegant hand, revealing an affair with a woman named Lillian, a secret that threatened to unravel his legacy. But Maurice was not a man to leave such matters to chance. Poirot continued. He hid his true will, a document that named his heir and exposed a thief who had plundered his estate. That will was concealed within the locket, a safeguard against betrayal. Can someone in this room knew its value? He paused, his eyes sweeping the room, lingering on each suspect. The maestro, this shadowy figure, orchestrated the theft of the locket to prevent the will's discovery. But who is the maestro? Had the cunning, the access, the motive to poison Maurice Dubois and silence his legacy? The room was silent, save for the faint ticking of a grandfather clock in the corner. Poirot stepped toward the piano, his fingers brushing the locket's velvet cushion. Let us consider the evidence, he said. The locket's theft was no simple act of greed. It required knowledge of the manner of Maurice's habits, of the locket's hidden compartment. It required someone close, someone trusted. He turned abruptly, his gaze locking onto a figure who had remained silent. Noticed in the room's periphery, Dr. Renaud, the village physician, stood near the door, his lean frame clad in a somber gray suit, his face impassive, but his eyes betraying a flicker of unease. Poirot's voice sharpened. Dr. Renaud, you have been conspicuously quiet. Yet you, monsieur, are the key to this mystery. A murmur rippled through the room. Clara gasped. Harold's jaw dropped, and Langley's brow furrowed. Lisa's eyes widened, her handkerchief falling to her lap. Renaud's expression hardened, but he said nothing, his silence a challenge. Poirot pressed on, relentless. You were Maurice Dubois's physician, were you not? You attended him in his final days, declaring his death a heart attack. But the truth, monsieur, is far uglier. You poisoned him slowly with a toxin that mimicked natural causes. Why? Because Maurice discovered you'll crime your embezzlement from his estate. Funds siphoned over years to fuel your own ambitions. Renaud's lips twitched, a faint smile that did not reach his eyes. It's preposterous. Poirot, he said, his voice smooth but edged with steel. You have no evidence, only theories. No evidence. Poirot's tone was almost playful, but his eyes were cold. Allow me to present the symphony of facts. The letters in the vault named you, Dr. Renaud, as the trusted friend who betrayed Maurice. The microfilm in the locket, which I have examined, contains Maurice's will that disinherits you and names Clara as his heir, with provisions to expose your theft. In the coded message, the truth lies where the music dies. It's pointed me to the music room, where I found traces of your presence, a prescription bottle, discarded in haste, bearing your initials. Renaud's composure faltered, his hands clenching at his sides. You cannot prove this, he said, but his voice wavered. Poirot stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet carrying the weight of certainty. You underestimated Hercule Poirot, monsieur. The smudges on the piano keys, the glove left at the vault, the coded messages pointed to a mind that sought to control, to manipulate. You were the maestro, orchestrating this charade to protect your secrets. You used Harrow to fence the locket, Langley to gain access to the manor, and Victor as a distraction. But your greatest mistake was underestimating the little gray cells of Hercule Poirot. The room erupted in chaos. Clara cried out, "You killed my uncle." Harrow stammered, "I didn't know, I swear." Langley stepped back, his face ashen, muttering, "I was only following orders." Elise rose from her chair, her frail frame trembling with rage and grief. "You monster," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You took my Maurice." Arnault's eyes darted to the door, his body tensing as if to flee. But before he could move, a figure emerged from the shadows of the doorway. Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's old friend and confidant, his sturdy frame blocking the exit. Hastings's face was grim, his hand resting on the hilt of a ceremonial sword he carried for effect. "Going somewhere, doctor?" he asked, his voice steady. Renaud froze, his shoulders sagging as the weight of his defeat settled upon him. Poirot nodded to Hastings, a silent acknowledgment of his timely arrival. "Merci, mon ami," he said softly, then turned back to Renaud. "You have played your final note, Dr. Renaud. The game is over." The aftermath was a whirlwind of emotion and action. Hastings, with the aid of 2 local constables who had been summoned discreetly, restrained Renaud, whose protests grew feeble as the evidence mounted. Poirot, ever meticulous, presented the microfilm to the authorities, its contents confirming Maurice's will and Renaud's crimes. The locket, returned to Elise's trembling hands, was opened to reveal the tiny reel of film, testament to Maurice's foresight and love for his wife, as the constables led Renaud away. The music room seemed to exhale, the tension dissipating like a fading cord. Clara approached Poirot, her eyes brimming with tears. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice thick with emotion. You've given us justice. More than that, you've given us truth. Poirot inclined his head, his expression softening. Justice, mademoiselle, is the harmony that restores order to chaos. But the truth, that is the melody that lingers. Lise, still seated, clutched the locket to her chest, her eyes distant yet peaceful. Morris knew, she murmured. He knew someone would try to silence his music. But you, Monsieur Poirot, you heard it. Poirot's gaze softened, a rare glimpse of vulnerability crossing his features. Madame, it is my privilege to listen where others hear only silence. As the suspects dispersed Harrow to face lesser charges, Langley to salvage his tarnished reputation, Poirot lingered in the music room, his fingers trailing over the piano keys. The locket, now safe, was a symbol of loss and love, a reminder of the personal cost of his pursuit of truth. Haka, he thought of Elise's grief, of Clara's burden, of the lives touched by Renault's greed. For a moment, the great detective allowed himself to feel the weight of it all, his heart as engaged as his mind. Outside, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Ashburn Manor's gardens. Poirot stepped onto the terrace where Hastings waited, his loyal friend offering a quiet smile. "Well, Poirot," Hastings said, clapping him on the shoulder, "another case solved. You never cease to amaze." Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile breaking through. "Mon ami, it is not amazement that drives me, but order. The world, it is full of discord. But with the little gray cells, we bring harmony." They walked toward the manor's gates, the village of Ashburn, settling into a peaceful dusk. The mystery of the locket was resolved, its painful truths laid bare. Yet Poirot knew that the echoes of this case, the betrayal, the quiet strength of Elise would linger in his mind. It's a haunting melody that no amount of order could fully silence. The music room, now empty, seemed to hum with the ghosts of its past. The locket, returned to its rightful place, gleamed softly in the fading light, a silent guardian of secrets no longer hidden. And as Poirot's silhouette faded into the twilight, the manor stood as a testament to his triumph. Symphony of Justice played to its final, resonant note. Chapter 1. The Vanishing Locket. The late summer sun hung low over London, its golden rays filtering through the heavy velvet curtains of Hercule Poirot's impeccably ordered flat at Whitehaven Mansions. The air was thick with the scent of polished wood and the faint tints of lemon from the tea he sipped, a delicate Darjeeling served in a porcelain cup, so fine it seemed to glow. Poirot, resplendent in a tailored suit of charcoal gray, his patent leather shoes gleaming like twin mirrors, sat at his mahogany desk, his small, fastidious hands arranging a stack of correspondence with the precision of a conductor orchestrating a symphony. His mustaches, those magnificent specimens of grooming, twitched slightly as he scanned the letter, his green eyes narrowing at its contents. Was not the usual missive of gratitude or trivial inquiry. No, this letter carried a tremor of urgency, a plea that stirred the little gray cells he so cherished. The letter was from Madame Elise Dubois, a retired opera singer whose voice had once enchanted the stages of Paris and Milan. Poirot had met her years ago during a case involving a stolen aria and a jealous soprano, and their acquaintance had blossomed into a warm, if occasional, correspondence. Now, her words, penned in a trembling hand, spoke of distress, her most cherished possession, a locket given to her by her late husband. Maurice Dubois had vanished from her home in the village of Ashburn. She wrote of strange noises in her manor, of a staff grown secretive, and of a fear that the theft was no mere act of greed, but something far more sinister. "Monsieur Poirot," she concluded, "you are my only hope. I beg you, come to Ashburn. The locket is more than a jewel, is my heart." Poirot set the letter down, his fingers tapping a rhythm on the desk. Ashburn, a sleepy hamlet nestled in the folds of Kent, was not the sort of place one associated with crime. Yet, he mused, the quietest villages often hid the darkest secrets. His mind flickered to the Laquita sapphire-encrusted piece Lise had once described, with intricate engravings that hinted at a story untold. Why would someone risk theft in so small a place? And why now, when Elise, frail and widowed, was at her most vulnerable? The little gray cells hummed, and Poirot knew he could not refuse. He rose, adjusting his tie with a flourish, and called for his valet, George, whose silent efficiency was a marvel in itself. "George, my good man, prepare my traveling case. I depart for Ashburn this afternoon. Ensured the green waistcoat is included. It is, I think, appropriate for the country air." "Very good, sir," George replied, his voice a model of discretion. "Shall I arrange for a car to the station? Oui, and inform Captain Hastings. He may wish to join me, though I suspect he will grumble about leaving his golf clubs behind." By noon, Poirot was aboard a train rattling through the English countryside. The fields a patchwork of green and gold under a sky of endless blue. Captain Arthur Hastings, his loyal friend, sat opposite, his broad face creased with curiosity. "I say, Poirot, what's this about a stolen locket? Sounds like a storm in a teacup to me. Probably some maid pinched it for a quick bob or two." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Mon ami, you underestimate the human heart. A locket is not merely a trinket, it is a vessel of memory, of passion. Madame Dubois would not summon Hercule Poirot for a trifle. No, there is a mystery here, and I intend to unravel it." Hastings chuckled, settling back with a newspaper. "I'll leave the unraveling to you. Just don't expect me to chase ghosts in some creaky old manor." The train deposited them at Ashburn's modest station, where a horse-drawn carriage awaited its driver, a ruddy-faced man named Tompkins, who tipped his cap with a grin. "Welcome to Ashburn, gents. Madame Dubois sent me to fetch you. Bit of a to-do up at the manor, eh?" Poirot inclined his head, stepping into the carriage with the grace of a cat. "A to-do, perhaps, but one that shall be resolved with order and method." The ride to Ashburn Manor wound through lanes lined with hedgerows, the air sweet with honeysuckle and the distant bleat of sheep. The manor itself rose like a faded dream, its ivy-clad stone walls softened by time, its chimneys puffing lazy curls of smoke. Yet there was an unease about it, a stillness too profound, as if the house held its breath. The windows, tall and mullioned, caught the sun's dying rays, but one, on the second floor, was cracked, its jagged edge glinting like a warning. Elise Dubois greeted them at the door, her once vibrant beauty now fragile, her silver hair pinned in an elegant chignon. Her eyes, still a piercing blue, were clouded with worry. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice a shadow of its former resonance, "you cannot know what it means to see you here. And Captain Hastings, how kind of you to come." Hastings bowed, a touch awkwardly. "Always a pleasure, Madame Dubois. Sorry to hear about your trouble." They were ushered into a drawing-room of faded grandeur, its walls adorned with portraits of stern-faced ancestors, and a grand fireplace that crackled with a modest flame. Elise sank into a velvet armchair, her hands twisting a lace handkerchief. "The locket," she began, "was Maurice's gift to me on our wedding day. It is not just its value, though. The sapphire alone is priceless, but what it represents. He said it held our future, our secrets, and now it is gone, taken from its case in my study." Poirot leaned forward, his hands clasped. "Tell me, Madame, when did you last see it?" 3 days ago, she replied. "I check it every evening. A habit, you understand." That night, I heard noises, footsteps, perhaps, or a door creaking. I thought it was the wind, but the next morning, the locket was gone. The case was locked, but there was a scratch on the glass, as if someone forced it. "And the staff?" Poirot asked. Who has access to the study? Elise hesitated. There is Mrs. Grayson, my housekeeper, who has been with me for years. Victor, the gardener, who is young and a bit odd, but harmless, I think. And Clara, my niece, who visits often. There's also Mr. Harrow, who delivers supplies from the village. They all know the manor, but I cannot believe they would betray me. Poirot's mustaches twitched. And these noises, where did they come from? From the music room, I think. It's where Morris composed his symphonies. I rarely go there. Now, it's too painful. But the staff say they hear things, too, whispers, footsteps. I fear it is Maurice, restless in death. Hastings shifted uncomfortably, but Poirot's expression remained serene. Restless spirits, madame, are often the work of living hands. May I see the study and this music room? Elise led them through corridors lined with faded tapestries, her steps slow but deliberate. The study was a small, intimate space, its walls lined with books and a single window overlooking the garden. A glass-fronted case stood against one wall, its lock intact but a thin, jagged scratch marring the pane. Poirot examined it closely, his magnifying glass catching the light. The scratch is fresh, he murmured. A tool, perhaps a knife, used with care, but not quite enough skill. The thief was in a hurry. He turned to the desk, its surface cluttered with papers and a silver inkstand. His fingers brushed a small, ornate box, its lid carved with musical notes. This box, madame, is significant. Elise's eyes softened. Maurice's. He kept his pens there, his notes. I haven't opened it since he died. Poirot lifted the lid, revealing a velvet lining, but nothing else. Yet the underside of the lid bore a faint inscription, to my Elise, where music lives. He closed it gently, his mind racing. And the music room. They crossed the hall to a larger chamber, its centerpiece, a grand piano draped in a dust sheet. The air was heavy with the scent of old wood and wax, and the windows were shuttered, casting the room in shadow. Poirot lifted the sheet, revealing keys yellowed with age but free of dust. Someone has played this recently, he said, pressing a key. A low, mournful note echoed, startling Elise. I don't understand, she whispered. No one comes here. Poirot's eyes scanned the room, noting a rug slightly askew, a candelabrum with fresh wax drippings. Someone does, madame. They are not as careful as they believe. Hastings, ever practical, coughed. Here, Poirot, are we chasing ghosts or thieves? This all seems a bit theatrical. Theatrical, yes, Poirot replied, but not supernatural. The human heart, mon ami, is the greatest stage of all. Someone wishes us to believe in ghosts, to distract from their true purpose. They returned to the drawing room, where Elise offered tea, her hands trembling as she poured. Poirot questioned her further, learning of the manor's routines, Mrs. Grayson's strict oversight, Victor's solitary habits, Clara's frequent visits, and Harrow's deliveries. H seemed innocuous, yet Poirot's instincts prickled. He requested to meet the staff, and Elise summoned them. Mrs. Grayson, a stout woman with a face like weathered oak, entered first, her apron crisp despite the late hour. I've served madame for 20 years, she said, her voice firm. I'd no more steal from her than cut my own hand. Poirot nodded, his eyes noting her calloused fingers, the faint stain of ink on her sleeve. And the noises, madame. Grayson, you have heard them? She hesitated. Aye, sir. Creaks, mostly, at night. I thought it was the house settling, but it's been worse lately. Always from the music room. The gardener was next, a lanky youth with nervous eyes and dirt-stained hands. I don't go in the house much, he mumbled. Just tend the roses. Heard noises, though, like someone humming. Gives me the shivers. Humming. Poirot's eyebrows lifted. A tune, perhaps. Victor shrugged. Couldn't say, I don't linger. Clara, Elise's niece, swept in last, her auburn hair pinned loosely, her dress a touch too fine for a village visit. Uncle Morris's locket means everything to Aunt Elise, she said, her voice earnest. I'd do anything to help find it. I was here the night it vanished, but I was in my room, asleep. Poirot's gaze lingered on her, noting the slight flush in her cheeks, the way her fingers toyed with a pearl bracelet. And you heard nothing, mademoiselle? Nothing unusual, she said quickly. Just the usual creaks, as the staff dispersed. Poirot paced the drawing room, his hands clasped behind his back. They all know more than they say, Hastings. The housekeeper's ink stain, the gardener's humming, the niece's bracelet each is a thread in the tapestry. But the locket, it is the knot that binds them. Hastings frowned. You think one of them took it? Caps? Perhaps not. But they are pieces of the puzzle, and I, Hercule Poirot, shall arrange them. That evening, Poirot dined with Elise, the meal a simple but elegant affair of roasted pheasant and asparagus. The conversation turned to Morris, whose death 2 years prior had been a quiet tragedy, attributed to a heart attack. He was working on a new symphony, Elise said, her voice wistful. He said it would be his greatest, but he never finished it. And the locket? Poirot asked gently. He gave it to you, when? On our wedding day, 25 years ago. He said it was our future, a promise. I never understood why, but I wore it always until he died. Then I kept it in a case, a memory too heavy to carry. Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging her words. After dinner, he excused himself, insisting on a solitary walk through the manor's grounds. The night was cool, the stars a glittering canopy above the darkened lawns. He moved silently, his polished shoes sinking into the grass, his eyes scanning the shadows. Near the rose garden, he spotted a faint glimmer shard of glass, half buried in the soil. He knelt, retrieving it with a handkerchief. It was curved, like part of a vial, and smelled faintly of bitter almonds. A curious find, he murmured, tucking it away. The little gray cells, they began to dance. Turning to the manor, Poirot requested to see the music room again. Alone, he lifted the piano's lid, his fingers brushing the keys. A faint smudge of dirt caught his eye, matching Victor's soil-stained hands. He pressed a sequence of notes, recalling the humming Victor mentioned, and was rewarded with a soft click. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing a narrow compartment. Side was a single sheet of paper, folded and yellowed, its edges brittle. With age, Poirot unfolded it with care, his heart quickening. It was not sheet music, as he'd expected, but a note in Morris's hand. The truth lies where the music dies. Below it, a sketch of the locket, its sapphire drawn with meticulous detail, and a single word, vault. He stood, the note clutched in his hand, his mind ablaze. The locket was no mere heirloom, it was a key, a secret Morris had hidden, perhaps at great cost. The chapter closed with Poirot slipping the note into his pocket, his resolve hardened. The manor's shadows held more than ghosts. They held a truth that someone had stolen to keep buried, and Hercule Poirot, with his unyielding method, would bring it to light. The night deepened, and as Poirot retired to his guest room, the manor seemed to sigh around him, its secrets whispering in the creaks and groans. He lay awake, the notes, words echoing in his mind. The locket's theft was the first thread in a tapestry of deceit, and he would not rest until every strand was unraveled. For now, the discovery of the note was a triumph, a satisfying step into the heart of the mystery. But the dance of the little gray cells had only begun. Chapter 2. Shadows in the music room. The air in Ashbourne Manor carried a weight that Hercule Poirot could almost taste a blend of old wood, wax polish, and something less tangible, perhaps the residue of secrets. The manor nestled in the heart of the village, stood like a grand dame, its ivy-clad walls whispering of bygone elegance. Poirot, his polished shoes clicking softly on the parquet floor, made his way to the music room, where Madame Elise Dubois had once sung arias that could hush a room to reverence. The cryptic note he had found in her study, "The truth lies where the music dies," echoed in his mind. Riddle that demanded unraveling. The music room was a cathedral of silence, its high ceilings adorned with faded frescoes of cherubs playing lyres. A grand piano dominated the space, its ebony surface gleaming under a chandelier that flickered with the manor's temperamental electricity. Poirot paused, his gloved fingers brushing the air as if to catch the room's pulse. He noted the heavy velvet curtains drawn to block the morning sun, and the rows of gilded chairs, relics of recitals long past. The room felt like a stage awaiting its actors, yet the absence of sound was profound, almost accusatory. He approached the piano, his keen eyes catching a faint irregularity, smudges on the keys, barely visible but unmistakable to his trained gaze. Someone had played this instrument recently, though Elise had sworn it lay untouched since her husband Maurice's death 2 years prior. Poirot pressed a key, a soft, mournful C-sharp, broke the silence, resonating with a clarity that seemed to mock the room's stillness. He examined the smudges closer, noting their uneven distribution. Not a casual touch, he thought, but deliberate, as if someone had lingered over a melody. Their fingers hesitant, yet purposeful. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, his mustache twitching, as his little gray cells began their dance. The music lives, yet it hides. His reverie was interrupted by the creak of the door. Mrs. Agnes Whitlock, the manor's housekeeper, stood in the threshold, her severe bun and starched apron giving her the air of a governess from a Dickens novel. Her eyes, sharp as flint, darted to the piano, then to Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice clipped, "Madame Dubois requests your presence for tea. She's in the parlor." Poirot inclined his head, noting the faint tremor in her hands as she clasped them before her. "Mercy, Madame Whitlock. But before I join her, perhaps you could enlighten me. This piano, when was it last played?" Her lips tightened, a flicker of unease crossing her face. "Since Monsieur Dubois passed, sir. Madame can't bear to hear it. Says it reminds her too much of him." "At the keys," Poirot said, gesturing delicately. "They tell a different story. Smudges, fresh ones. Someone has played N'est ce pas?" Mrs. Whitlock's gaze hardened, but she offered no reply, only a curt nod before turning to leave. Poirot watched her go, his mind cataloging her reaction. The housekeeper knew more than she let on, but pressing her now would yield little. Patience, he reminded himself, was the key to unlocking reticent tongues. He spent the next hour examining the music room, its movements precise, almost balletic. He inspected the sheet music stacked on a mahogany stand, its pages yellowed but undisturbed. He tested the floorboards for hidden compartments, finding none. The windows, though locked, bore faint scratches near the latches, suggesting an attempt at entry or exit. Each detail was a thread, and Poirot was determined to weave them into a tapestry of truth. As noon approached, he ventured outside to the manor's sprawling gardens, where the air was thick with the scent of roses and damp earth. The staff, he had learned, included a young gardener named Victor Hale, whose name had surfaced in whispers among the maids. They spoke of his late-night wanderings near the manor, his sullen demeanor, and his peculiar fascination with Madame Dubois's past as an opera star. Poirot found Victor near a hedgerow, clipping roses with a precision that bordered on obsession. The young man was wiry, his dark hair falling over eyes that seemed perpetually shadowed. "Monsieur Hale," Poirot began, his tone genial but probing, "you have a most admirable dedication to these roses. They are, how do you say, magnifique. Victor glanced up, his shears pausing mid-snip. Just doing my job, sir, he muttered, his voice low, tinged with a local burr. Indeed, Poirot said, stepping closer, his eyes fixed on Victor's calloused hands. But I wonder, do you also have a passion for music? It's the music room. It is a place of beauty now. Perhaps you have visited it. Victor's shoulders stiffened, and he set the shears down, wiping his hands on his trousers. I don't go. In the house, much too grand for the likes of me. Poirot smiled, a disarming curve of his lips. Yet the maids, they speak of you lingering near the manor at night. Perhaps you admire its architecture under the moonlight. The gardener's eyes narrowed, a flush creeping up his neck. I don't know what you're getting at, sir, but I've done nothing wrong. I keep to my work. Of course, Poirot said, raising a placating hand. But if you were to hear, say, a melody from the music room in the dead of night, would you not be curious? A young man with an ear for beauty, perhaps drawn to the songs of Madame Dubois. Victor's jaw clenched, and for a moment Poirot thought he might bolt. Instead, the gardener muttered, I heard her sing once, years ago, in London. Voice like an angel. But that's all past now. She don't sing no more. Poirot nodded, filing away Victor's admission. The young man's reverence for Elise's voice suggested a connection, but whether it was innocent admiration or something darker remained unclear. He excused himself, leaving Victor to his roses, and returned to the manor to prepare for tea with Elise. The parlor was a study in faded opulence, its walls lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. Elise sat by a window, her frail form swathed in a velvet shawl, her eyes distant as she clutched a teacup. Poirot noted the tremor in her hands, the way her gaze flickered to the door, as if expecting an intruder. Madame Dubois, he began, settling into a chair opposite her. This locket of yours, it is more than a trinket. A piece of your heart, perhaps, tied to your husband's memory. Elise's lips quivered, and she set the teacup down with a clink. It was his last gift to me, Monsieur Poirot. A sapphire locket, engraved with a musical staff. Morris said, it held our song, our love. Without it, I feel unmoored. Poirot leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. In the music room, madame, you say it has been silent since his death. Yet I find signs of life. There's smudges on the piano keys, a sense of presence. Tell me, have you heard anything, perhaps in the night? Her eyes widened, and she gripped the arms of her chair. Sometimes I dream of music, his music. But when I wake, there's nothing, only silence. Do you think it's him, Monsieur Poirot, his spirit, restless because of the locket? Poirot's mustache twitched, but he kept his expression neutral. A spirit, perhaps, but not of the supernatural kind. The living, madame, they leave traces, smudges, scratches, whispers. We'll find your locket, and with it, the truth. Elise nodded, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. Poirot excused himself, his mind racing. The locket, the music room, the garden reach was a piece of a puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. He resolved to return to the music room that night, suspecting that darkness might coax out its secrets. As evening fell, Ashburn Manor took on a different character, its shadows lengthening, its silence more oppressive. Poirot, clad in a dark overcoat to blend with the gloom, slipped into the music room, leaving the lights off. He positioned himself behind a heavy curtain, his senses attuned to every sound, the creak of the house settling, the distant hoot of an owl, the faint rustle of leaves outside. He waited, his patience a honed weapon. Hours passed, the grandfather clock in the hall chiming midnight, then one. Just as Poirot began to question his strategy, a soft thud broke the silence, followed by the faintest scrape of a door. He held his breath, peering through a slit in the curtain. A figure, cloaked in darkness, moved toward the piano. Their silhouette barely discernible in the moonlight, filtering through a crack in the curtains. The figure sat, their hands hovering over the keys, and then a melody. Soft, halting, but unmistakable. It was a fragment of one of Maurice Dubois's compositions, a lilting waltz that seemed to weep as it played. Poirot's heart quickened. But he remained still, watching as the figure rose, leaving something on the piano. The door scraped again, and they were gone. Poirot emerged, his flashlight casting a narrow beam. On the piano lay a single sheet of music, its edges curling, its surface marked with the same smudges he'd seen on the keys. At its center was a drawing of Elisa's locket, its sapphire rendered in meticulous detail, surrounded by musical notes that formed a cryptic pattern. He lifted the sheet, his fingers tracing the notes. They were not random. They formed a sequence, a code perhaps, echoing the note from Elisa's study. The truth lies where the music dies. The locket, he realized, was not merely stolen. It was a key to something greater, a secret Maurice had hidden in his music. The chapter of the music room's mystery had closed with this discovery, a satisfying step forward, but it opened a new door. One leading deeper into the manor's past and the shadows that lingered there. Poirot slipped the sheet into his pocket, his mind already charting the next move. Chapter 3. The Gardener's Secret. The morning mist clung to Ashburn's rolling hills, draping the village in a silvery veil that softened the edges of its ancient stone walls. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, stood at the edge of Ashburn Manor's sprawling gardens, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the dew-soaked grass. His gray eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the meticulously tended flower beds, where roses and lavender bloomed in defiant bursts of color against the gray dawn. The manor loomed behind him, its ivy-clad facade, both grand and foreboding, as if whispering secrets it had held for centuries. Poirot's mind, however, was fixed on a single figure, Victor, the young gardener whose nervous glances and late-night wanderings had piqued his curiosity. The previous night's discovery in the music room, a sheet of music inscribed with the locket's design, had set Poirot's little gray cells into a frenzy. The melody he'd heard, fleeting and ghostly, suggested someone was using the manor's musical legacy to obscure a darker truth. Victor, with his intimate knowledge of the estate and his peculiar obsession with Madame Elise Dubois's operatic past, had emerged as a key piece in this intricate puzzle. Poirot had resolved to shadow him, to peel back the layers of his reticence and uncover what he knew about the vanished locket. As the sun began to burn through the mist, Poirot caught sight of Victor near the greenhouse, his lanky frame bent over a row of potted herbs. The gardener's hands moved with practiced care, but his eyes darted toward the manor's upper windows, as if expecting to be watched. Poirot, concealed behind a gnarled oak, noted the tension in Victor's posture. "Mon ami," he thought, "you carry a burden heavier than those pruning shears." Approaching with his characteristic measured gait, Poirot called out, "Bonjour, Monsieur Victor. A fine morning for tending to the roses, is it not?" Victor started, nearly dropping his trowel, his face, freckled and sun-browned, flushed with unease. "Mr. Poirot," he stammered, brushing dirt from his hands. "Didn't expect to see you out here so early." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "The early hour. It is the best time for observation, Nan. The flowers, they speak of care, but the gardener, perhaps he speaks of other things." He tilted his head, his gaze piercing. "Tell me, Victor, what brings you to the manor at such strange hours? The stars, they are not so fascinating as to demand your presence at midnight." Victor's eyes widened, and he shifted his weight, glancing toward the greenhouse as if it might offer an escape. "I checked the plants, sir. Some need watering at night. The roses, they're delicate. We, Poirot mused, stepping closer. But not so delicate as the truth, which wilts under scrutiny. You were seen, Victor, near the music room last night. Yet you claim only to tend the gardens. Curious, is it not? The gardener's face paled, and he gripped the trowel tightly. I don't know what you mean, sir. I keep to my work. Poirot's smile remained, but his tone sharpened. Poirot, he does not accuse without reason. Come, let us walk, and you will tell me what you know of Madame Elise's locket. It is a small thing to share a truth with Poirot, and yet it may save you from greater trouble. Reluctantly, Victor nodded, and they began to stroll along the garden path, the crunch of gravel underfoot punctuating the silence. The air was thick with the scent of lavender, but Poirot's focus was unwavering. He sensed Victor's fear. A fear not of guilt, but of something or someone lurking in the shadows. I didn't take the locket, Victor blurted at last, his voice low. I swear it, Mr. Poirot, I'd never steal from Madame Elise. She's been kind to me, letting me work here even after everything. Poirot's eyebrow arched. You speak of a history, perhaps? Tell me, what binds you to this manor beyond your pruning shears? Victor hesitated, his gaze dropping to the ground. My father worked here years ago when Madame Elise and her husband, Mr. Morris, were the talk of Ashburn. He was a groundskeeper, like me. He left suddenly after Mr. Morris died. Never told me why, only that I should stay clear of the manor. But when Madame Elise offered me work, I couldn't say no. I needed the money, and I wanted to know more about her. Her voice, her performances, they're like magic. Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind remained razor sharp. An admirable passion, but passion, it can blind. You have been seen, Victor, lingering where you should not, near the music room, near the manor's private quarters. And I have heard of your visits to the village, to a certain antiques dealer. What business does a gardener have with such a man? Victor stopped short, his breath hitching. You've been watching me, Poirot? He observes. The detective corrected, his tone gentle but firm. And what he observes is this: you are entangled in something larger than yourself. Speak, Victor, and let us unravel this knot together. The gardener's shoulders slumped, and he ran a hand through his tousled hair. All right, he said at last. I've been selling things, small things, nothing important. Bits of old silver, broken tools, things left in the sheds. The dealer, Mr. Harrow, he pays well, and I needed the money to help my mother. She's sick, Mr. Poirot, and the doctors aren't cheap, but the locket, I never touched it. I wouldn't. It's too special to Madame Elise. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. And yet, you know of it? You know its value, its meaning. Tell me, who else knows of this locket's importance? Victor's eyes darted toward the manor again, and his voice dropped to a whisper. There's someone who asked about it. Not by name, but they knew what it looked like. They came to me a week ago, in the grove beyond the orchard, a figure in a cloak, face hidden. They offered me money more than I'd ever seen to find the locket and bring it to them. I said no, Mr. Poirot, I swear, but they scared me. Said if I talked, the song would end. I don't know what they meant, but it felt like a threat. Poirot's mustache quivered with interest. A cloaked figure, you say? Most intriguing. In this meeting, it took place in the grove. Show me, Victor. Take me there, and perhaps we shall find a clue to this mysterious stranger. Victor hesitated, then nodded, leading Poirot through the gardens to a secluded grove where ancient yew trees formed a natural canopy. The air here was cooler, the light dimmer, and the ground was littered with fallen leaves. Poirot's eyes scanned the area, noting the trampled grass where two people had clearly stood. He crouched, his fingers brushing the earth, and found a small object half buried in the soil, a cigarette case, silver and ornate, with the initials CL engraved on its surface. Mandra Poirot murmured, holding the case to the light. A careless mistake, perhaps, or a deliberate taunt. Tell me, Victor, did this cloaked figure smoke? Victor shook his head. I didn't see. They kept their distance, stayed in the shadows, but they gave me this. He reached into his pocket and produced a crumpled piece of paper, handing it to Poirot with trembling hands. Poirot unfolded it carefully. The note was written in a hurried, slanted script. Keep silent, or the song ends. The ink was fresh, the paper slightly damp from the morning dew. Poirot's lips curled into a faint smile. Clue, Victor, and a good one. This note, it speaks of fear, but also of power. Someone wishes to control you, to keep you silent. Kill Poirot. He is not so easily silenced. Victor swallowed hard. What do I do, Mr. Poirot? They find out I told you. You will do nothing, Poirot said firmly. You will continue your work, tend your roses, and say nothing of our conversation. Poirot, he will handle this cloaked figure. But first, we must visit this Mr. Harrow, the dealer in antiques. If he traffics in the manor secrets, he may know more than he wishes to reveal. Leaving the grove, Poirot led Victor back toward the manor, his mind racing. The cigarette case, the note, the cloaked figure all pointed to a conspiracy deeper than a simple theft. The locket, it seemed, was not merely a sentimental trinket, but a key to something greater. Something tied to Maurice Dubois's death and the manor's hidden truths. The village of Ashburn was a short walk from the manor, its cobbled streets, lined with quaint shops and bustling with morning trade. Poirot, with Victor trailing reluctantly behind, made his way to Harrow's Antiques, a narrow shop wedged between a bakery and a tailor's. The bell above the door jingled as they entered, and the air inside was heavy with the scent of old wood and polish. Shelves overflowed with curios, porcelain figurines, tarnished silver, and dusty books, but Poirot's eyes were drawn to a glass case in the corner, where a photograph of Elise's locket gleamed among a collection of stolen goods. Mr. Harrow, a wiry man with spectacles perched precariously on his nose, emerged from the back room, wiping his hands on an apron. Good morning, gentlemen, he said, his smile faltering as he recognized Poirot's distinctive figure. Mr. Poirot, isn't it? How it brings you to my humble shop. Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. Monsieur Harrow, it is not humility that brings me here, but suspicion. You have in your possession a photograph of a locket belonging to Madame Elise Dubois. This locket, it was stolen, and yet it appears among your wares. Explain, if you please. Harrow's face drained of color, and he stammered. I don't know what you mean, sir. That photograph is just a record of items I've appraised. I never saw the locket itself. Poirot stepped closer, his voice low and precise. Do not play games with Hercule Poirot. Okay, you deal in stolen goods, monsieur, and this locket is no ordinary trinket. Who brought you this photograph? A cue is this. CL, whose cigarette case I hold. He produced the silver case, holding it just out of Harrow's reach. The dealer's eyes widened, and he sank into a chair, defeated. All right, he whispered. I'll tell you what I know. The photograph came from a client, someone who calls themselves the maestro. I don't know their real name. They work through intermediaries. They wanted the locket appraised, said it was valuable, but I never had it in my hands. I swear, Mr. Poirot, I'm just a middleman. This maestro, Poirot pressed. What do they seek? Why this locket? Shook his head. I don't know. They said it was special. Something about a secret it holds. They were willing to pay a fortune, but only if it was delivered by tomorrow night. There's a sale planned at the gala. Poirot's eyes gleamed. The gala at Ashburn Manor. Oui, most convenient occasion for such a transaction. Des cigarette case, does it belong to the maestro? Harrow hesitated, then nodded. I've seen it before. They dropped it once when we met, but I don't know who CL is, honest Mr. Poirot. Poirot pocketed the case, his mind already turning to the gala. Very well, Monsieur Hercule. You will say nothing of this visit, and you will continue your business as usual. Poirot, he will deal with the maestro. As they left the shop, Victor's voice trembled. Mr. Poirot, what now? The maestro finds out I led you to Harrow. Poirot placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Fear not, Victor. You have done well to speak the truth. Now, return to your gardens and leave the rest to Poirot. The locket, it is close. In the truth, it is closer still. As Victor trudged back to the manor, Poirot stood in the village square, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The cigarette case in his pocket felt heavy, its initials a tantalizing clue. CL, he thought. Clara, perhaps. Or another, hidden in plain sight. The gala loomed, a stage where secrets would dance and the maestro's mask might finally slip. For now, the gardener's secret was laid bare, a satisfying step in the unraveling of Ashburn's mystery. But Poirot knew the true mastermind remained in the shadows, and he would not rest until the locaton, its painful truths were brought to light. Chapter 4. The Dealer's Confession. The air in Ashburn carried a crisp edge, the kind that hinted at autumn's approach as Hercule Poirot stepped out of the antique shop, his gloved hand clutching the ledger he had wrested from Mr. Harrow. The dealer's confession still echoed in his mind, a nervous stammer of half-truths and reluctant revelations. Harrow, with his darting eyes and sweat-slicked brow, had crumbled under Poirot's relentless probing, admitting to fencing stolen goods for a shadowy figure known only as the maestro. The name, theatrical and elusive, intrigued Poirot, for it suggested a mind that thrived on control and spectacle. The ledger, its pages filled with meticulous entries, confirmed Harrow's role in a smuggling ring. What it was the final line that set Poirot's little gray cells ablaze. A sale of Madame Elise Dubois's locket, scheduled for Ashburn's annual gala, an event set to unfold that very evening. Poirot stood on the cobbled street, his polished shoes catching the faint glow of a gas lamp. Ashburn's village square bustled with preparations for the gala, its quaint charm transformed by the flurry of vendors erecting stalls and musicians tuning their instruments. The manor, perched on a hill overlooking the village, loomed like a silent sentinel, its windows aglow with the promise of opulence. Poirot adjusted his hat, his mustache twitching as he considered his next move. The gala presented an opportunity stage where the maestro might reveal himself, or at least his intentions. But to catch a shadow, Poirot knew he must become one himself. He returned to his temporary lodgings at the Rose and Crown, in cozy establishment with ivy-clad walls and a landlord who prided himself on discretion. In his room, Poirot spread the ledger across a mahogany desk, its pages a map of deceit. The entries detailed transactions of jewelry, paintings, and rare books, each linked to Ashburn Manor or its late master, Maurice Dubois. The locket, however, stood out a sapphire-encrusted piece, described with reverence, as if it were more than mere ornament. Harrow's confession had been clear. The maestro demanded the locket specifically, offering a sum that made Harrow's hands tremble as he recounted it. Poirot's fingers traced the ledger's final entry. Locket, Sapphire, Dubois Estate, to be delivered at gala, 9 p.m. Contact masked. A masked contact, the gala's tradition of masquerade, a nod to Ashburn's theatrical heritage, complicated matters. Every guest would be cloaked in anonymity, a perfect veil for the maestro or his agent. Poirot's lips curved into a faint smile. Mon ami, he murmured to himself. If the game is to hide, then Hercule Poirot shall play it better. He summoned the inn's porter, a wiry youth named Tom, who doubled as a local gossip. Monsieur Tom Poirot began, his voice smooth as velvet. You are, I understand, a man who sees much in Ashburn. Kia, tell me of this gala. Who attends? What is its character? Tom, eager to please, leaned against the doorframe. It's the grandest night of the year, sir. Everyone who's anyone in Ashburn and beyond comes, lords, ladies, merchants, even them London types. They all wear masks, like in a play, and there's dancing, music, and a feast fit for a king. Held at the manor, of course, Madame de Bois's place. She don't always come down, mind you, on account of her health, but her niece, Miss Clara, she's the belle of the ball. They say the gala's been going since Maestro Dubois, her late husband, was alive, to honor his music. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And this year, is there talk of unusual guests? Perhaps someone new or secretive? Tom scratched his chin. Well, there's always strangers at the gala, sir, on account of the masks. But I heard from Molly, the manners cook, that a gentleman arrived yesterday, booked a private carriage from London. Nobody got a good look at him, but he's staying at the manor, guest of Lord Langley. Bit odd that Langley is not one for company. Lord Langley, Poirot repeated, filing the name away. Mercy, Tom, you have been most helpful. He slipped the boy a shilling, dismissing him with a nod. Langley, a known figure in Ashburn's social circles, had been mentioned in passing by Ulysses Staffa, wealthy patron of the arts with a penchant for privacy. His involvement, even peripherally, warranted scrutiny. Poirot turned to his wardrobe, selecting a tailored black suit, its elegance understated yet impeccable. From a locked case, he retrieved a mask of sleek, silver creation that covered half his face, leaving his piercing eyes and distinctive mustache visible. The disguise was subtle, designed to blend rather than dazzle, for Poirot knew the value of observation over ostentation. He tucked the ledger into a hidden pocket of his coat, its weight a reminder of the stakes. The gala was not merely a social event. It was a chessboard, and Poirot intended to checkmate the maestro before the night was through. As dusk settled, Poirot hired a carriage to Ashburn Manor, the road winding through fields dusted with early frost. The manor's silhouette grew sharper, its turrets cutting against the twilight sky. Lanterns lined the drive, casting golden pools that flickered as guests arrived in droves carriages, unloading figures in velvet cloaks and feathered masks, their laughter mingling with the strains of a distant orchestra. Poirot stepped down, his cane tapping the gravel with measured precision. He scanned the crowd, noting the swirl of colors, the flash of jewels, the whispered exchanges behind fans. The air thrummed with anticipation, but beneath it, Poirot sensed a current of unease, as if the manor itself held its breath. Inside, the grand hall was a vision of splendor. Chandeliers dripped crystal, their light refracting across polished marble floors. Guests glided through waltzes, their masks transforming them into characters from a Venetian carnival, harlequins, queens, and enigmatic strangers. Poirot moved among them, his steps deliberate, his eyes darting to catch every detail. A gloved hand slipping a note, a masked figure lingering too long by a shadowed alcove, a servant's nervous glance toward the upper floors. He spotted Clara, Elisa's niece, in a gown of emerald silk, her mask adorned with peacock feathers. She danced with a tall man whose posture suggested confidence, perhaps arrogance. Poirot filed the image away, his instincts whispering that Clara, too, might hold a piece of the puzzle. He sought out Harrow, expecting to find the dealer skulking in a corner. Instead, he spotted him near the refreshment table, his mask a garish red affair that clashed with his ill-fitting suit. Harrow's hands trembled as he sipped a glass of champagne, his eyes scanning the room. Poirot approached, his voice low and commanding. Monsieur Harrow, a word, if you please. Harrow started, nearly spilling his drink. Monsieur Poirot. You're here, I thought. You thought to avoid me, perhaps? Poirot's tone was velvet over steel. The gala is a fine place for secrets, Nan, but not from Hercule Poirot. Tell me, where's this masked contact of yours, the one who awaits the locket? Harold's eyes darted to a staircase leading to the manor's upper floors. I don't know his face, I swear. Case to meet me at 9 by the east balcony. He'll be wearing a black mask with a silver crescent. That's all I know. Poirot's gaze followed Harold's, noting the staircases curve into darkness. And this maestro, what does he gain from the locket? Speak, monsieur, or I shall ensure the authorities know every detail of your ledger. Harold paled, his voice dropping to a whisper. It's not just the locket's value, it's the maestro said it holds something inside. A secret, he called it, worth more than gold. I didn't ask, more didn't dare. Poirot nodded, dismissing Harold with a flick of his hand. The dealer scurried away, lost in the crowd. A secret within the locket. The words aligned with the cryptic note from Chapter 1. The truth lies where the music dies, and the sheet music from Chapter 2, inscribed with the locket's design. Poirot's mind raced, weaving connections. The locket was no mere heirloom. It was a key, perhaps, to Maurice Dubois's death, or to a truth someone wished buried. As the clock neared 9, Poirot positioned himself near the east balcony, a secluded spot overlooking the manor's gardens. The balcony was framed by ivy, its stone balustrade cool under his touch. He blended into the shadows, his mask a perfect shield. Guests drifted past, unaware of the drama unfolding in their midst. At precisely 9, a figure emerged from the crowd, a man in a black mask with a silver crescent, his cloak flowing like ink. He paused, scanning the balcony, then slipped a folded note from his sleeve and placed it on the balustrade. Poirot's heart quickened. He waited, motionless, as the man retreated. The moment the figure vanished into the throng, Poirot seized the note, unfolding it with care. In elegant script, it read, "The locket sings tonight." The words sent a shiver through him, not for their poetry, but for their implication. The maestro was close, his plan in motion. Poirot pocketed the note, his eyes narrowing. The locket was the key, but to what lock? And who held the true power, the maestro, or another, still unseen? The orchestra struck up a new waltz, its notes cascading like water. Poirot returned to the hall, his mind a whirl of possibilities. Clara caught his eye again, now alone, her expression troubled as she slipped toward the library. Poirot followed, his steps silent on the marble. The library was a sanctuary of oak and leather, its shelves heavy with tomes. Clara stood by a window, her mask discarded, her face pale. She clutched a small book, its pages worn. Sensing his presence, she turned, startled. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped. "You startled me." "Pardonnez-moi, mademoiselle," Poirot said, bowing slightly. "But I observe you are distressed. Perhaps it is this book, or something, related to the locket." Clara hesitated, then nodded. "It's my uncle's diary. I found it in his study. There's a page. It mentions the locket, and a secret he feared would destroy us all. I don't understand it, but I think someone wants it silenced." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "May I see this page, mademoiselle?" She handed him the book, open to a torn page. The entry, dated a month before Maurice's death, read, "The locket holds my shame, my legacy's end. If the maestro learns of it, all is lost." Poirot's pulse quickened. The locket was no mere trinket. It was a vessel of truth, perhaps, a confession. He thanked Clara, urging her to remain vigilant, and slipped the diary into his coat. The chapter was closing, but the mystery deepened. The maestro was not just a thief, but a hunter of secrets, and Poirot was determined to unmask him Before the locket song became a requiem, the gala continued. Its revelry, a stark contrast to the shadows Poirot chased. He stepped onto the balcony once more, the note in his pocket a burning weight. The locket sings tonight. The words were a challenge, and Hercule Poirot never refused a challenge. As the clock struck 10, he vowed to find the maestro, to unravel the locket's secret, and to bring justice to Ashburn Manor. The night was young, and the game was far from over. Chapter 6. The composer's last note. The morning sun filtered through the heavy drapes of Ashburn Manor, casting long, golden slants across the polished oak floors. Hercule Poirot stood in the grand hallway, his polished shoes gleaming as brightly as his resolve. The air carried the faint scent of lavender polish and old secrets, a combination that both soothed and unsettled him. His mind, ever restless, churned over the clues unearthed thus far. The vanishing locket, the haunting melody in the music room, Victor's coded message, the dealer's ledger, and Clara's torn diary page. Each piece was a note in a symphony of deceit, and Poirot was determined to conduct its truth to the surface. He adjusted his tie, a crisp knot of silk, and murmured to himself, "The little gray cells, they demand order, and order I shall bring." His destination was clear. The life and death of Maurice Dubois, Elisa's late husband, whose shadow loomed larger with every step Poirot took through the manor. The diary page Clara had given him, its edges frayed like the trust in this household, mentioned a fatal composition. Those words, cryptic yet deliberate, suggested Maurice's death was no mere accident. Poirot's instincts, honed by years of unraveling human folly, whispered of murder. He descended the staircase, his cane tapping lightly, and made his way to the library, where Elise had agreed to meet him. The room was a sanctuary of leather-bound tomes and faded tapestries, its air thick with the musk of aging paper. Elise sat by a tall window, her frail form draped in a shawl the color of twilight. Her eyes, once bright with the fire of the stage, now held a quiet sorrow. The locket's absence weighed on her, Poirot knew. But it was the shadow of Maurice's death that truly dimmed her spirit. "Madame Dubois," Poirot began, bowing slightly, "I thank you for your time. I must speak of your husband, Maurice's life, his work, his departure. There are questions that demand answers." Elisa's fingers tightened around the arms of her chair, her knuckles pale. "Maurice was my world," she said, her voice a fragile melody. "His music was his soul, and when he died, it was as if the music stopped. A heart attack, they said. So sudden. But you, Monsieur Poirot, you suspect otherwise." Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his mind at work. "At the heart, it can fail for many reasons, madame. Some natural, some less so. Tell me, what was Maurice working on before his passing?" "The diary speaks of a fatal composition." "What did he mean?" Lisa's gaze drifted to the window, where the gardens bloomed in defiance of autumn's chill. "Maurice was composing a symphony, his greatest yet. He called it Lament for the Lost. He worked in secret, locking himself in the attic for hours. He said it was for me, a gift to heal old wounds. But he grew distant, anxious. He spoke of mistakes, of debts unpaid. I thought it was the strain of creation." Poirot nodded, his eyes narrowing. "In this symphony, it was never performed." "No," Elise replied, her voice catching. "He died before it was complete. The score was lost, or so I thought. It was his gift to me after our child." She paused, her breath hitching. It held a lock of her hair. Maurice said it was his way of keeping her close. Poirot's heart, usually so guarded, stirred at the mention of Elisa's lost child. He had glimpsed such grief before, in cases where love and loss intertwined like thorns. But he pressed on, his voice gentle yet firm. "Damn, I must see this attic. If Morris hid his work, it may hold the key to the locket's disappearance and, perhaps, to his death. Elise hesitated, then nodded. The attic is untouched since his passing. I could not bear to disturb it, but for you, Monsieur Poirot, I will allow it. The attic stairs creaked beneath Poirot's measured steps, each grown a reminder of the manor's age and secrets. The air grew heavy as he ascended, dust motes swirling in the slivers of light, piercing the narrow windows. At the top, a heavy oak door stood ajar, its hinges rusted from disuse. Poirot pushed it open, revealing a cavernous space cluttered with the relics of Morris's life. Stacks of sheet music, a cracked metronome, a violin case coated in dust. A single skylight illuminated the room, casting a soft glow on a small desk in the corner. Poirot's eyes scanned the chaos with surgical precision. Order, always order, he muttered, stepping carefully over scattered pages. His gaze settled on a wooden box beneath the desk, its surface carved with musical staves. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the wood polished to a sheen despite years of neglect. The small lock, tarnished but intact, guarded its contents. He knelt, his fingers brushing the carvings. A composer's heart lies in his music, he said aloud, as if speaking to Morris's ghost. The lock was simple, and Poirot, ever prepared, produced a small tool from his waistcoat. With a deft twist, the lock clicked open, revealing a bundle of yellowed sheet music bound with a faded ribbon. The title, scrawled in Maurice's elegant hand, read, "Lament for the Lost." Poirot's pulse quickened. He untied the ribbon, spreading the pages across the desk. The notes were intricate, a tapestry of sorrow and beauty. What caught his eye were the annotations in the margin, small, precise symbols that matched the engravings on Elise's locket. A 5-pointed star, a crescent moon, a spiral. Dear, Poirot whispered, a code hidden in plain sight. He pored over the music, his mind racing. The annotations formed a pattern, a sequence that seemed to repeat every fourth measure. Poirot, no musician but a master of patterns, began to hum the melody softly, his fingers tracing the symbols. The locket, it is not merely a keepsake, he mused. It is a key. His reverie was interrupted by a faint creak from the stairs. He froze, his hand slipping to his cane, which concealed a slender blade for such moments. Who was there? Key called, his voice sharp. Silence answered, but Poirot's senses were alert. He moved to the door, peering down the dim staircase. A shadow flickered at the bottom, too quick to identify. The hunter becomes the hunted, he murmured, descending cautiously. The shadow was gone, but a faint scent lingered, tobacco, rich and foreign, unlike the manor's usual aromas. Back in the attic, Poirot returned to the score. The annotations, he realized, were not random, corresponded to a cipher he had encountered in a past case, one used by a secret society to conceal messages. Maurice, what did you hide? He asked the empty room. Spent hours decoding, his pencil scratching furiously. The symbols, when aligned with the musical notes, spelled a chilling message. Vault beneath the vines. Trust no one. Rose. Mustache twitched. A vault, he said, his voice alive with discovery. And the locket, it unlocks the truth. The manor's wine cellar was a labyrinth of stone and shadow, its air cool and damp. Poirot, armed with a lantern and his unyielding curiosity, navigated the narrow passages, his footsteps echoing like a metronome. The clue beneath the vines suggested a connection to the cellar, where ancient grapevines were etched into the walls, a nod to Ashburn's history as a vintner's haven. He traced the carvings, his fingers brushing the rough stone. At the far end of the cellar, behind a rack of dusty bottles, he found a section of wall where the vines formed a distinct paterna spiral, identical to the locket's engraving. C'est magnifique, he murmured, pressing the stone. Low grinding sound filled the air as the wall shifted, revealing a narrow passage. Poirot stepped inside, his lantern casting eerie shadows. The passage led to a small chamber, its walls bare except for a single iron door etched with musical notes. The door had no handle, only a circular indentation the size of a locket. The key, Poirot said, his voice echoing of the locket, was still missing, and without it, the vault remained sealed. He examined the door, noting the precision of the notes. They matched the opening bars of Lament for the Lost. A musical lock, he said, marveling at Morris's ingenuity. Without the locket, I am a maestro without an orchestra. As he turned to leave, a faint rustle caught his ear. He swung the lantern, illuminating a figure in the passage, a young woman, her face pale with fear. It was Clara, Elisa's niece, her eyes wide. Monsieur Poirot, she gasped. I followed. You, I had to know. Poirot's gaze softened, but his voice was firm. Mademoiselle Clara, this is no place for secrets. Why do you follow me? Clara wrung her hands, her voice trembling. I found something in Uncle Morris's study after you left the gala, a letter hidden in a book. It said he was afraid that someone was watching him. He mentioned a doctor, Dr. Renaud. Rose's eyes gleamed. Dr. Renaud, the physician who declared Morris's death a heart attack. Clara nodded. The letter said he was being blackmailed. Uncle Morris wrote that the locket held proof, something that could ruin someone powerful. Tarot's mind raced. Dr. Renaud, a respected figure in Ashburn, had been at the gala. His demeanor unremarkable, yet oddly watchful. Mademoiselle, you have done well to tell me, Poirot said, but you must return to the manor. This vault, it is dangerous. Clara hesitated, then obeyed, her footsteps fading up the passage. Poirot lingered, his lantern illuminating the iron door. Dr. Renaud, he murmured. A man of medicine or a man of poison. The next morning, Poirot sought out Dr. Renaud at his modest clinic in Ashburn Village. The doctor, a wiry man with spectacles perched on a sharp nose, greeted him with a practiced smile. Monsieur Poirot, an honor, he said, gesturing to a chair. To what do I owe this visit? Poirot sat, his posture impeccable. Doctor, I am a man who values precision. Your report on Maurice Dubois's death was precise? Yes. A heart attack, sudden and tragic. Renaud's smile faltered. Indeed, a terrible loss. Morris was a patient of mine for years. His heart was weak, a congenital defect. Curious, Poirot said, his tone light, but his eyes piercing. For a man so young, so vibrant. And yet, I hear whispers of poison, doctor. Suggest a heart attack was convenient. Renaud's hands trembled, but he steadied them on his desk. Poison. Preposterous. I conducted a thorough examination. The coroner agreed. Poirot leaned forward, his voice a velvet blade. And yet, doctor, I find that truth, like music, has many notes. Some are hidden, played only in the shadows. Tell me, what did Maurice know that made him a threat? Renaud's face paled, but he held Poirot's gaze. I know nothing of threats or poison. I am a doctor, not a murderer. Poirot rose, adjusting his gloves. We shall see, doctor. The truth, it always sings in the end. Back at the manor, Poirot gathered his notes, the pieces of the puzzle aligning like a score. Morris's symphony, the locket's engravings, the vault, and now Dr. Renaud's name all pointed to a murder concealed by a physician's lie. But the locket remained elusive, and without it, the vault's secrets were locked away. He returned to the attic, re-examining the sheet music. The code, he realized, was incomplete. The final measure was missing, as if Morris had hidden it. Elsewhere, Poirot's eyes fell on the violin case, untouched in years. He opened it, revealing not a violin, but a single page of music, tucked beneath the velvet lining. It was the final movement of lament for the lost, Tate, and its annotations completed the cipher. The vault opens when the locket sings. Poirot's heart raced. The locket sings, he repeated. The phrase echoed the note from the gala, tying the locket to the vault's mechanism. He envisioned a device, perhaps a musical one, where the locket's engravings aligned with the door's notes to produce a sounding key in melody. As dusk fell, Poirot stood in the manor's garden, the weight of the case pressing on him. The locket was close. He felt it, but so was danger. The shadow in the cellar, the tobacco scent, Renault's trembling handsaw suggested the maestro was watching, waiting. Poirot's resolve hardened. The truth, he said to the twilight. It will not hide forever. Chapter 7. The vault's dark secret. The air in Ashburn Manor was heavy with the scent of old oak and wax polish, a testament to the centuries it had stood, guarding its secrets like a silent sentinel. Hercule Poirot, his polished shoes tapping softly on the polished parquet, descended the narrow staircase to the wine cellar, his mind a whirl of deductions. The cryptic musical code deciphered from Maurice Dubois's lament for the lost had led him here, to a hidden vault beneath the manor's foundations, a vault that promised answers to the mystery of the stolen locket and, perhaps, the murder of Elisa's husband. The cellar was a labyrinth of shadows, its stone walls glistening with damp. Rows of dusty bottles lined wooden racks, their labels faded, as if time itself had grown weary of guarding them. Poirot's torch cast a narrow beam, illuminating cobwebs that draped like forgotten lace. His heart, ever disciplined, quickened slightly. This was no ordinary cellar. The musical notes etched into the vault's door, as revealed by the symphony's annotations, were not mere decoration, but a lock puzzle only a mind like Poirot's could unravel. He paused before the heavy iron door, its surface cold under his gloved fingers. The notes carved into H, G, A, F, E, D matched the opening bars of Maurice's final composition. Poirot hummed the tune softly, his precise mind aligning each note with a mechanism he suspected lay within. Mon Dieu, he murmured, the music is the key. N'est-ce pas, a composer's final act of genius. With a delicate touch, he pressed the corresponding points on the door, imagining them as keys on a piano. A low groan echoed, and the door shuddered, cued, inching open to reveal a narrow chamber. Inside, the vault was a stark contrast to the cellar's chaos. It was small, barely large enough for a man to stand upright, with walls of smooth stone and a single wooden table at its center. No locket gleamed in the torchlight, to Poirot's disappointment, but the table held a small iron box, its lid engraved with the same sapphire-laid design as Elisa's cherished artifact. His fingers, nimble despite the chill, worked the lacquer. Simple mechanism, almost insultingly so for a man of his intellect. The box clicked open, revealing a stack of letters tied with a crimson ribbon. Their edges yellowed, but intact. Poirot's gray cells sparked as he untied the ribbon, his eyes scanning the first letter. It was penned in a woman's hand, elegant yet urgent, addressed to Maurice Dubois. My dearest Maurice, it began, your silence wounds me, but I cannot let our secret die. The locket holds more than your heart, it holds our truth. The signature was a single initial, L. Poirot's lips pursed. An affair, Pater, mon ami Maurice, you are not so saintly as your widow believes. The letters, 5 in total, spoke of a clandestine love, a woman who feared exposure, and a threat from someone called the maestro, who knew their secret and demanded payment to keep it buried. The revelation was a jolt, yet satisfying in its clarity. The locket, Poirot deduced, was not merely a sentimental trinket, but a vessel for a dangerous truth, perhaps evidence of Maurice's infidelity. A clue to his murder. The mention of the maestro tied this discovery to the smuggling ring Poirot had uncovered with his tentacles reaching from Victor the gardener to Harold the dealer. But who was L? And why had the maestro targeted the locket so relentlessly? As Poirot slipped the letters into his coat, a faint scuff echoed behind him. His torch swung toward the sound, catching a glint of movement to shadow, retreating into the cellar's depths. "Qui la," he called, his voice sharp but steady. No answer came, only the patter of footsteps fading up the stairs. Poirot's instincts flared. He was not alone, and the intruder knew he had found the vault. With the agility of a man half his age, he pursued, his torch cutting through the darkness like a blade. The cellar stairs were treacherous, slick with moss, but Poirot ascended with care, his mind racing. The intruder could be the maestro or lackey sent to silence him. At the top, he emerged into the manor's kitchen, now deserted, save for the faint glow of a lantern left burning. The back door hung ajar, a cold draft sweeping through. Poirot stepped outside, his eyes scanning the moonlit garden. A figure darted across the lawn, cloaked in black, too swift for pursuit. But as the figure vanished into the hedgerow, something caught the moonlighted glove. Dropped in haste, its leather gleaming, Poirot retrieved it, his fingers tracing the monogram. A bold, embroidered L. "It's tens," he said softly. "The plot, it thickens." The glove was fine, tailored for a gentleman, and its monogram matched the initial in the letters. Could L be both the lover and the pursuer? Or was this a deliberate misdirection? Poirot tucked the glove into his pocket, his mind already piecing together the next move. The glove pointed to Lord Langley, the gala guest, whose suave demeanor had piqued Poirot's suspicions. Langley's estate was nearby, and his presence at the gala placed him uncomfortably close to the locket's trail. The night was still young. Poirot returned to the manor, his thoughts a symphony of possibilities. He sought out Elise, finding her in the drawing room, her frail form wrapped in a shawl, eyes clouded with grief, brightened at his approach. "Monsieur Poirot, have you found my locket?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Not yet, madame," Poirot replied, his tone gentle but firm. "But I have uncovered a truth that may bring us closer. Tell me, did your husband ever speak of a woman whose name began with L?" Elise's face paled, her hands clutching the shawl. "No, never. Maurice was devoted to me, to our life here." "Why do you ask?" Poirot studied her, noting the flicker of fear in her eyes. Was it fear of the truth, or of something more sinister? "Madame, a mere thread in the tapestry. Rest now, and trust Poirot." He bowed, leaving her to her thoughts, but his mind was far from at ease. Elise's denial felt too quick, too practiced. Did she know of Morris's affair, or was she another victim of the maestro's schemes? The next morning, Poirot set out for Lord Langley's estate, a sprawling manor that dwarfed Ashburn's quiet elegance. The grounds were manicured to perfection, every hedge trimmed, every rose in bloomer, testament to Langley's wealth and control. Poirot, dressed impeccably in his black suit, presented his card to the butler, who ushered him into a grand library. Langley awaited, his tall frame draped in a velvet smoking jacket, a glass of brandy in hand despite the early hour. "Monsieur Poirot," Langley said, his voice smooth as silk, "to what do I owe this unexpected pleasure?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a sign of his amusement at Langley's feigned ease. "Monsieur, I come on a matter of some delicacy. A glove, monogrammed with your initial, was found last night near a most curious vault. Vous comprenez?" Langley's smile faltered, his fingers tightening around the glass. "A glove, I assure you, I've lost none." "Surely a coincidence." "Coincidence," Poirot repeated, his eyes narrowing. "A word I find most unsatisfactory. Tell me, monsieur, were you at Ashburn Manor last night? Pater in the cellar?" Langley laughed, a forced sound that echoed in the high-ceilinged room. "Preposterous. I was here, hosting a small gathering. My staff can confirm it. Mean, sir, Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. Yet I wonder, monsieur, if your staff might also confirm your interest in a certain L'Aquita sapphire beauty belonging to Madame Dubois. Langley's face hardened, but he recovered quickly, setting down his glass. You overstep, Poirot. I've no interest in trinkets. If you've accusations, make them plain. Poirot leaned forward, his voice low. Very well. I accuse you of being entangled in a web spun by one called the Maestro, a web that includes theft, blackmail, and perhaps murder. The glove, monsieur, places you at the scene. Shall we discuss the letters or the vault? Langley's composure cracked, his eyes darting to the door. You've nothing but conjecture, he snapped. Leave, or I'll have you removed. Poirot stood, his movements deliberate. I shall leave, monsieur, but know this. Hercule Poirot does not rest until the truth is laid bare. Au revoir. He departed, but not before noting the tremor in Langley's hand, sign of guilt or fear. Back at Ashburn Manor, Poirot retreated to the music room, seeking clarity among the piano's silent keys. The letters, the glove, the vaultile pointed to a conspiracy that reached beyond the locket. The maestro was no mere thief, but a puppeteer, manipulating pawns like Victor, Harrow, and perhaps Langley. The L in the letters could be Langley or another lover, a conspirator, or both. Poirot's mind turned to Clara, Elise's niece, whose heated exchange at the gala hinted at her own secrets. Could she be L, or was she, too, a pawn? As evening fell, Poirot arranged a discreet meeting with Captain Hastings, his old friend who had arrived in Ashburn to assist. They met in the village, in its low beams and crackling fire, a stark contrast to the manor's grandeur. Hastings, his face weathered but eager, listened as Poirot recounted the vault's discovery. Sounds like a right mess, old chap, Hastings said, sipping his ale. Oh, this Langley fellow think he's the maestro. Non, mon ami, Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. Langley is a thread, not the needle. The maestro is cleverer, more elusive, but the glove, the letters, they bring us closer. Tomorrow we shall attend Langley's recital. I suspect he will play his part in volontairement. The recital was Langley's annual affair, a lavish event drawing Ashburn's elite. Poirot and Hastings arrived early, blending into the crowd of silk gowns and tailored suits. The grand hall was alive with music, a string quartet weaving a delicate melody. Poirot's eyes, however, were on Langley, who stood near the stage, his smile fixed but strained. The piano, a gleaming centerpiece, drew Poirot's attention. Its keys bore the same faint smudges he'd seen in the music room. As the quartet paused, Langley took the stage, announcing a surprise performance. A tribute, he said, to our dear friend, Maurice Dubois. The crowd murmured, and Poirot's senses sharpened. Was this a taunt or a mistake? Langley sat at the piano, his fingers poised, and began to play Lament for the Lost. The notes were haunting, precise, and Poirot recognized them instantly, the same sequence that had unlocked the vault. Monsieur, he spurred to Hastings. He knows the code. He has been in the vault. Before Hastings could respond, Poirot slipped away, using the music as cover. He navigated the manor's corridors, reaching Langley's study, a room he'd scouted earlier. So safe, hidden behind a portrait, was his target. With a hairpin from his pocket, a trick learned from necessity, Poirot worked the lock, his movements swift yet silent. The safe clicked open, revealing a velvet pouch. Inside was the locket, sapphire catching the dim light. Poirot's triumph was cut short by a shadow in the doorway. Langley, his face pale with fury. You've gone too far, Poirot, he hissed, a revolver gleaming in his hand. Monsieur, Poirot said calmly. A gun is a poor substitute for the truth. Tell me, are you the maestro, or merely his servant? Langley's hand shook, his eyes wild. I'm no mastermind, he spat. I was paid to retrieve the locket, to keep it from the wrong hands. The maestro, he knows everything. He'll ruin me if I fail. And who is he? Poirot pressed, stepping closer, his voice steady despite the threat. Langley hesitated, then lowered the gun. I don't know his face, only his orders. The locket was to be delivered tonight, at the recital's end. Poirot nodded, pocketing the locket. Merci, monsieur. You have been most helpful. He turned to leave, but not before signaling Hastings, who had followed, discreetly. Ensure Monsieur Langley remains here, mon ami. K. The maestro will not have his prize tonight. As Poirot exited the study, the recital's final notes echoed through the manor. The locket was his, a hard-won victory, but the mystery was far from solved. Langley's confession confirmed a larger scheme, with the maestro still in the shadows. The letters, the glove, the locketol were pieces of a puzzle that Poirot was determined to complete. Chapter 8. Lord Langley's Masquerade. The evening air in Ashburn carried a crisp bite, a prelude to autumn's inevitable embrace. As Hercule Poirot stepped out of his hired car onto the gravel drive of Langley Hall, the estate loomed before him, a sprawling Jacobean manor with ivy-clad walls and mullioned windows that glinted like wary eyes under the fading sun. Torches flickered along the path to the entrance, their flames dancing in rhythm with the distant strains of a string quartet. Lord Langley's private recital, an annual affair renowned for its exclusivity, promised a night of elegance and intrigue, perfect stage for Poirot to unmask the elusive figure pulling the strings behind Elise Dubois's stolen locket. Poirot adjusted his pristine bow tie, his mustache impeccably waxed, and surveyed the scene. Carriages and sleek automobiles lined the drive, scorching guests in tailored suits and shimmering gowns, their faces alight with anticipation. Yet Poirot's sharp eyes, ever attuned to the subtleties of human behavior, noted the undercurrent of tension. A footman hesitated a fraction too long before taking a lady's coat. A group of guests whispered furtively, their glances darting toward the manor's upper windows. Something was amiss, and Poirot's little gray sails hummed with the promise of revelation. Inside, Grand Hall was a spectacle of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast prisms of light across polished oak floors, and heavy tapestries adorned the walls, depicting scenes of medieval hunts and pastoral idyls. A long table bore an array of delicacies, oysters on ice, glistening caviar, and delicate pastries that seemed almost too beautiful to eat. Servants glided silently, offering champagne flutes to the assembled elite of Ashburn and beyond. Poirot accepted a glass, though he merely held it, his attention fixed on the crowd. Lord Langley himself stood at the far end of the hall, a tall, lean man in his late 40s, his silver hair swept back, his eyes sharp beneath arched brows. He wore a tailored black suit with a crimson cravat, exuding the effortless charm of a man accustomed to command. Beside him stood a young woman in a sapphire gown, her auburn hair cascading in waves of striking contrast to Langley's austere elegance. Poirot recognized her from the gala at Ashburn Manor, Miss Evelyn Langley, the lord's niece, whose poised demeanor masked a flicker of unease. Poirot's gaze shifted to the grand staircase, where a small stage had been erected for the recital. A gleaming Steinway piano dominated the space, its ebony surface reflecting the chandelier's glow. The instrument was identical to the one in Elise's music room, down to the faint smudges on its key smudges Poirot had noted days earlier, suggesting someone had played it recently, despite Elise's claim that it lay untouched since her husband's death. The coincidence was no coincidence, Poirot thought, his lips curling slightly. The locket, the music, The men are all threads in a tapestry of deception, and tonight he intended to pull them apart. He approached Lord Langley, weaving through the crowd with the grace of a man half his age. "Monsieur Langley," Poirot said, his voice smooth yet carrying an edge of authority. "It is a pleasure to attend your most illustrious recital. Hercule Poirot, at your service." Langley's smile was polite but guarded. "Monsieur Poirot, your reputation precedes you. I trust you'll find the evening's entertainment to your liking. Our pianist, Madame Fournier, is a prodigy." "Most assuredly," Poirot replied, his eyes locking onto Langley's, "though, I confess, I am equally intrigued by the setting. This piano, for instance, so similar to one I have seen at Ashburn Manor, a curious parallel, and—" Langley's smile faltered, a fleeting crack in his composure. "A common model, I'm sure. Steinways are hardly rare." "Perhaps," Poirot said, tilting his head. "Get the smudges on the keys, such a distinctive pattern. One might think the same hands had touched both instruments." Evelyn, standing nearby, interjected with a light laugh. "Uncle, you mustn't let Monsieur Poirot unsettle you. He sees mysteries in every shadow." Her tone was playful, but her eyes held a warning. Poirot bowed slightly. "Mademoiselle, it is the shadows that often reveal the truth. But come, let us enjoy the music." "I am eager to hear Madame Fournier's performance." The guests took their seats. Poirot positioned himself near the back, where he could observe the entire room. The recital began with a flourish, Madame Fournier's fingers coaxing a cascade of notes from the piano Beethoven sonata, its mournful cadences filling the hall. Poirot's attention, however, was divided. He watched Langley, who stood near the stage, his posture rigid, his gaze flickering toward a side door. Evelyn, seated a few rows ahead, twisted a sapphire ring on her finger, her movements betraying nervous energy. Halfway through the sonata, Poirot noticed a servant slip through the side door, a tray of empty glasses in hand. The door led to a corridor, and Poirot's instincts urged him to follow. Excusing himself with a murmur about needing air, he glided from the hall, his patent leather shoes silent on the polished floor. The corridor was dimly lit, lined with portraits of Langley ancestors, their stern faces watching Poirot's progress. He moved swiftly, guided by the faint clink of glass from ahead. Rounding a corner, he spotted the servant, a young man with a nervous gait, entering a study. Poirot paused, pressing himself against the wall. Kent peered through the crack of the door. Inside, the servant placed the tray on a desk and approached a bookshelf. With a practiced motion, he pressed a hidden panel, revealing a small safe embedded in the wall. Poirot's heart quickened. The servant glanced around, then opened the safe, withdrawing a velvet pouch. As he turned, the pouch caught the light, and Poirot glimpsed the glint of sapphire the locket. Before Poirot could act, the side door to the study opened, and Lord Langley himself stepped inside. The servant froze, clutching the pouch. "You're late," Langley hissed, his voice low but venomous. "The maestro expects delivery tonight." I had to wait for the right moment," the servant stammered. "The guests, no excuses," Langley snapped. "Give it to me." Poirot's mind raced. The locket, here in Langley's possession. But was Langley the maestro, or merely another pawn? The monogrammed glove from the vault ambush bore an L, and Langley's nervous glances tonight suggested guilt. Yet something in his tone, fear, not authority, hinted at a larger force at play. Poirot needed to act, but confrontation now risked alerting the maestro. Instead, he devised a plan. Slipping back to the hall, he rejoined the recital, just as Madame Fournier concluded her piece to thunderous applause. Poirot clapped politely, his mind elsewhere. He needed a distraction, something to draw Langley away and give him access to the study. Spotting a waiter with a tray of champagne, Poirot approached, his demeanor casual. "Mon ami," he said softly. "A small favor. Spill a glass consideratingly. Of course, near Lord Langley. A moment's chaos is all I require." The waiter, a young man with a mischievous glint, nodded. "For a detective like you, sir, easy enough." Moments later, a crash echoed through the hall as champagne splashed across Langley's suit. Guests gasped, and Langley, cursing under his breath, excused himself to clean up, striding toward the corridor. Poirot moved swiftly, re-entering the study through the side door. The safe was still ajar, the velvet pouch inside. He opened it, and there it was in Lisa's locket, its sapphire gleaming like a star in the dim light. He pocketed it, his fingers brushing the intricate engravings, closed the safe, ensuring no trace of his intrusion remained. As he turned to leave, the door swung open, and Lord Langley stood there, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock. "Poirot," he said, his voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" Poirot faced him, his expression serene. "Monsieur Langley, I am securing what does not belong to you. This locket is the property of Madame Dubois, and its theft is but one thread in a web of deceit." Langley's shoulders sagged, and he sank into a chair, his hands covering his face. "I'm not the maestro," he said, his voice muffled. "I swear it. I was blackmailed. He knows things about my family, my debts. I had no choice." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Who is he, monsieur?" "Maestro holds such power over you." Langley shook his head. "I don't know his face, only his demands." The locket was to be delivered tonight to a courier at the recital. If I failed, T trailed off, his gaze distant. Poirot leaned forward, his voice firm but kind. "Sire, you have made errors. But there is time yet to make amends. Help me, and I shall ensure your cooperation is noted." Langley hesitated, then nodded. "The courier is a man in a gray suit, wearing a silver pin shaped like a treble clef. He's here, among the guests." Poirot's lips curved into a smile. "Merci, Monsieur Langley. You have done well." He turned to leave, but paused. "One thing more, to not speak of this to anyone. The maestro must believe his plan proceeds unhindered." Returning to the hall, Poirot scanned the crowd, his eyes locking onto a man matching Langley's description. The man stood alone, sipping champagne, his silver pen glinting under the chandelier. Poirot approached, his demeanor casual. "Monsieur, a fine evening, is it not? I am Hercule Poirot, and I believe we have business to discuss." The man's eyes widened, but he recovered quickly, offering a thin smile. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, sir. I'm merely a guest." Nan, Poirot said, his voice soft but unyielding. "You are the courier, and I have what you seek." He patted his pocket, where the locket rested. "But you will not have it. Instead, you'll tell me who sent you." The man's smile vanished, and he turned to flee, but Poirot's hand shot out, gripping his wrist. "Do not make a scene, monsieur. It will not end well for you." Before the man could respond, a commotion erupted near the stage. Evelyn Langley had fainted, her sapphire gown pooling around her as guests rushed to her aid. Poirot released the courier, who slipped into the crowd. But not before Poirot noted his face's sharp jaw, pale blue eyes, a scar above his left brow. He would find him again. As the recital resumed, Poirot retreated to a quiet corner, the locket heavy in his pocket. Langley's confession, the courier's presence, the smudged piano keys, all pieces of a puzzle nearing completion. The maestro was close, his influence permeating Ashburn like a shadow. Poirot was closer still, and tonight's triumph securing. The locket was a step toward unmasking the mastermind. He glanced at the piano, its keys silent now, and thought of Elise, her frail hands clutching the hope of her lost love. The locket was more than a trinket. It was a key to a truth buried in music and murder. As the final notes of the recital faded, Poirot vowed to see this through, no matter the cost. The maestro's final bow was coming, and Hercule Poirot would be there to draw the curtain. Chapter 10. A quiet farewell. The morning sun draped Ashburn in a golden veil, its rays filtering through the ancient oaks that lined the village's cobbled lanes. Hercule Poirot stood at the edge of Madame Elise Dubois's garden, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the dew-kissed grass. The air carried the faint scent of roses and the distant chime of the village church, marking the hour with a solemnity that matched the detective's mood. The case of the vanishing locket, with its tangled web of deception, murder, and hidden truths, had reached its denouement. Yet, as Poirot's little gray cells often reminded him, the resolution of a mystery was not merely the unmasking of a villain, it was the restoration of order, the mending of broken hearts, and, sometimes, the quiet acknowledgement of losses too deep to fully heal. Elise sat on a rattan bench beneath a trellis of climbing ivy, her frail hands folded in her lap. The locket, its sapphire gleaming like a captured star, rested on a velvet cushion beside her. It was returned at last, not merely as a piece of jewelry, but as a vessel of memory, a tangible link to her late husband, Maurice K., and the child they had lost so many years ago. Poirot observed her in silence, noting the way her fingers trembled as they hovered near the locket, hesitant to touch it, as if its weight carried the full measure of her grief. "Monsieur Poirot," she said at last, her voice soft but steady, "you have given me back more than I dared hope. This locket. It is not just a trinket. It is my heart, my past, my everything." Her eyes, still sharp despite her age, met his with a gratitude that bordered on reverence. Poirot inclined his head, his mustache twitching slightly as he offered a gentle smile. "Madame, it is the duty of Hercule Poirot to restore what has been taken, to bring light where shadows have fallen. But I confess, this case has touched me deeply. The locket, it is a symbol, of love, of loss, of secrets kept too long." Elise's gaze drifted to the garden, where a sparrow flitted among the roses, its song a delicate counterpoint to the morning's stillness. "You know, monsieur, I never spoke of her. My daughter, Celeste. She was only 3 when she saw." Her voice broke, and she pressed a handkerchief to her lips. "Maurice had the locket made for me after she was gone. Inside, he placed a lock of her hair, so I could carry her with me, always. When it was stolen, I felt as though I had lost her all over again." Poirot's heart, usually so disciplined, stirred with a quiet ache. He was no stranger to solitude, to the private burdens one carried beneath a composed exterior. "Madame," he said, stepping closer, "your pain, it is understood. To lose a child is a wound that time does not heal, only softens. But you have been strong, and now you have her close once more." Elise opened the locket, revealing the tiny curl of golden hair nestled within. Her fingers brushed it gently, and a tear slipped down her cheek, catching the sunlight. "Maurice was my strength," she murmured. "When he died, I thought it was his heart, weakened by grief. To learn it was poison." She shook her head, as if to banish the thought. "Dr. Renaud's betrayal cuts deep, but it is your discovery of the truth that allows me to mourn him properly." Poirot nodded, his mind drifting to the events of the previous night, the dramatic gathering in the music room, where he had laid bare Dr. Renaud's crimes. The physician, with his veneer of respectability, had poisoned Morris to conceal his embezzlement from the composer's estate, using the locket's hidden microfilm of Morris's will as leverage in his schemes. The arrest, orchestrated with Captain Hastings's timely arrival, had been a triumph of justice, yet it left Poirot with a lingering sense of melancholy. The locket's return was a victory, but it could not erase the years of Elise's suffering. Madame, he said, the truth, it is a double-edged sword. It cuts away the lies, but it leaves scars. I hope, in time, you will find peace in knowing that Maurice's memory is honored and his killer brought to justice. Elise looked at him, her eyes searching his face. You are a remarkable man, Monsieur Poirot. You see so much, yet you carry your own burdens, do you not? Poirot's smile was wistful. The little gray cells, they observe, they deduce, but they cannot shield the heart. I am, as you say, a man, and men feel the weight of the world, even when they do not show it. Their conversation was interrupted by the crunch of gravel on the path. Captain Hastings approached, his tweed suit slightly rumpled from the morning's exertions. He carried a small leather valise, his expression a mix of satisfaction and impatience. Poirot, old chap, the train to London leaves in an hour. If we're to make it, we'd best be off. The village is buzzing about last night quite, the show you put on. Poirot raised an eyebrow. A show? Hastings. Nan, it was merely the unveiling of truth, presented with the elegance and precision that Hercule Poirot demands. But you are correct. We must not linger. Madame, may we escort you inside? Lise shook her head, her smile soft but firm. Monsieur, I wish to stay here a while with my memories, but please, join me for tea before you go. 'Tis the least I can offer. Poirot hesitated, his instinct to depart warring with his desire to honor her request. Very well, madame. Cup of tea, and then we shall take our leave. The trio moved to the Manor's conservatory, a glass-walled haven filled with potted ferns and the scent of jasmine. A maid, her eyes still wide with awe at Poirot's reputation, served a tray of delicate porcelain cups in a pot of steaming Earl Grey. Hastings, ever the enthusiast, launched into a recounting of the previous night's events, his voice animated. Must say, Poirot, the way you cornered Renaud was brilliant. The look on his face when you revealed the microfilm in the locket priceless. And Clara, poor girl, she was in tears, but I think she's relieved to know the truth about her uncle. Poirot sipped his tea, his expression serene but his mind active. Oui, Hastings, but it's not the drama of the moment that matters, but the clarity it brings. Clara, she is young, and the truth will help her heal. As for Dr. Renaud, his greed was his undoing. The locket, it was not merely a prize, but a key to his downfall. Elise, listening quietly, set down her cup. Clara has been through so much. She adored Maurice, you know. He was like a father to her after her own past. To think she suspected a curse. I should have told her the truth about the locket years ago. Poirot's eyes softened. Madame, we protect those we love, sometimes by silence. You could not have known the path this would take. Clara is strong, like her aunt. She will find her way. Hastings, sensing the weight of the moment, shifted the conversation. What I don't understand, Poirot, is how you knew the locket was in Langley's safe. You barely glanced at him during the recital, yet you were certain. Poirot's mustache twitched with amusement. Ah, Hastings, it is the art of observation. Lord Langley, he played the gracious host, but his hands, they betrayed him. The way he touched the piano keys, with the same hesitation as the smudges in the music room, and his glove, mon ami, the monogram L, was a clue too obvious to ignore. The safe, it was the logical place for a man of his vanity to hide his prize. Lise chuckled softly, the sound like a chime in the quiet room. You make it sound so simple, monsieur. But I saw the way you moved through my home, noticing every detail, the scratch on the locket's case, the smudges on the piano, the note in Victor's pocket. It is a gift, truly. Poirot inclined his head, accepting the compliment with grace. It is not a gift, madame, but a discipline. The world, it speaks to those who listen. The locket, it spoke of love and loss, of secrets hidden in plain sight. Hercule Poirot merely translated its story. As they finished their tea, the The conversation turned to lighter matters: Hastings's plans for a fishing trip, Elisa's hope to revive her garden, the quiet beauty of Ashburn now free from its shadows. Yet Poirot's mind lingered on the locket, on the lock of Celeste's hair, and on the solitude that Elise would face in the days to come. He thought, too, of his own life, his tidy flat in London, his meticulous routines, the absence of family to fill the spaces between cases. The melancholy, though fleeting, was real. They rose to leave, and Elise clasped Poirot's hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "Monsieur, you have given me closure, a gift beyond price. I wish to pay you to show my gratitude." Poirot shook his head, his eyes warm. "Non, madame. Your peace is my reward. Keep the locket close, and let it remind you of love, not loss. Adieu." She pressed a small parcel into his hands, a box of Belgian chocolates, a nod to his heritage. "Chibik for the journey," she said with a smile. Poirot bowed deeply, touched by the gesture. The walk to the station was brisk. The village alive with the chatter of market vendors and the laughter of children. Hastings, ever cheerful, regaled Poirot with tales of his latest misadventures. But Poirot's thoughts were elsewhere. He saw Elisa's face, the locket in her hands, the weight of her memories. He saw Maurice crafting his final symphony, unaware of the poison in his veins. And he saw himself, Hercule Poirot, a man who solved the puzzles of others but carried his own unanswered questions at the platform. The train to London hissed and steamed, its whistle piercing the morning air. Hastings boarded first, securing their compartment, while Poirot paused to take in the view. The countryside stretched before him, green and endless, a tapestry of life that continued despite its sorrows. He thought of Celeste, of the lock of hair, of the love that outlasted death, and he thought of justice, served not with fanfare, but with quiet dignity. Poirot. Hastings called from the window. "You'll miss the train if you keep daydreaming." Poirot smiled, adjusting his hat. "Dreaming, Hastings? Nan, I am merely reflecting." The case is closed, the locket returned, the truth revealed. All is in order. He climbed aboard, settling into the plush seat opposite Hastings. As the train pulled away, he opened his notebook, its pages filled with the neat script of his deductions. He closed it with a soft snap, the sound final, complete. The mystery of the locket was solved, its painful truths laid bare. Ashburn faded into the distance, and Poirot, content, let his gaze drift to the passing fields, where the world, for a moment, seemed at peace. The journey to London was quiet, save for Hastings's occasional chatter and the rhythmic clatter of the train. Poirot unwrapped a parcel from Elise, savoring the rich scent of chocolate. He offered one to Hastings, who accepted with a grin. "To a job well done, a Poirot." "Oui, mon ami," Poirot replied, his voice soft. "To justice, to truth, and to the memories we carry." And so, as the train carried them toward the bustle of London, Hercule Poirot allowed himself a moment of rest, his heart lighter, his mission fulfilled. The locket, the manor, the music, they were behind him now, but their echoes lingered, a reminder that even in the darkest mysteries, there was light to be found, if one only knew where to look. Chapter 11. The echoes of Ashburn. The train to London rattled along, its steady rhythm a counterpoint to the restless thoughts swirling in Hercule Poirot's mind. The case of the vanishing locket was closed. Dr. Renaud was in custody, and Madame Elise Dubois clutched her cherished keepsake once more. Yet, as the countryside blurred past the window, Poirot's little gray cells refused to rest. A faint unease, like a discordant note in an otherwise perfect symphony, tugged at him. The locket's secrets had been laid bare, but Ashburn, with its quiet lanes and shadowed manor, seemed to whisper of something more, something Poirot had not yet uncovered. Captain Hastings, sprawled in the seat opposite, was engrossed in a newspaper, occasionally muttering about cricket scores. "I say, Poirot," he said, glancing up. "You're awfully quiet. Case all wrapped up, isn't it? No need to look so glum." Poirot adjusted his hat, his mustache twitching with a faint smile. "Glum, Hastings. Nan, I am merely reflecting. The case, it is resolved. But the heart of Ashburnett beats still with secrets. Hercule Poirot does not leave a puzzle incomplete." Hastings frowned, folding the paper. "Incomplete. You caught the blighter, got the locket back, and Elise is over the moon. What's left?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Que mon ami, you see the surface, but the depths, they remain unexplored. Detail, a trifle that nags at me. The locket, it was returned, but why was it so vital to Dr. Renault's scheme? It's a microfilm of Morse's will. It explained much, but not all. There is a thread, Hastings, and I must follow it." The train's whistle pierced the air, signaling a brief stop at a rural station. Poirot's gaze drifted to the platform, where a young woman in a claret-colored coat stood, clutching a letter. Her face, pale and anxious, caught his attention. She glanced at the train, hesitated, then hurried away, disappearing into the crowd. Poirot's fingers tapped his knee. "Curious," he murmured. "Very curious." Hastings followed his gaze. "What's that? Someone you know?" "Nah, but she is troubled. In trouble, Hastings. It follows a case, like a shadow. Come, we must return to Ashburn." Hastings blinked, incredulous. "Return? We've only just left. The train's halfway to London." Poirot rose, his decision made. We shall disembark at the next station and take the return train. The little gray cells, they demand satisfaction. There is more to this story, and Hercule Poirot will not rest until it is found. By late afternoon, Poirot and Hastings were back in Ashburn, the village's charm now tinged with an air of mystery. The station master, a grizzled man with a penchant for gossip, recognized Poirot immediately. "Back so soon, sir. Thought you'd solved that locket business." Poirot inclined his head. "Monsieur, the surface is polished, but beneath there are cracks. Tell me, have you seen a young woman in a claret coat, carrying a letter, perhaps looking distressed?" The station master scratched his chin. "Hi, sounds like Miss Lydia Marsh. Lives at Willow Cottage, edge of the village. Always a bit nervy. That one. Saw her this morning, posting a letter in a right hurry." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Merci, you have been most helpful." He turned to Hastings. "To Willow Cottage, mon ami." The thread, it begins to unravel. The walk to Willow Cottage was brisk, the autumn air crisp with the scent of fallen leaves. The cottage itself was a quaint affair, its thatched roof sagging slightly, its garden overgrown with wildflowers. Poirot knocked, and after a moment, the door creaked open to reveal Lydia Marsh. She was in her late 20s, with auburn hair pinned loosely and eyes that darted nervously. The claret coat hung on a rack behind her. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice trembling. I heard you were in Ashburn. Why are you here?" Poirot removed his hat, his manner impeccable. "Mademoiselle Marsh, I am Hercule Poirot, and this is my associate, Captain Hastings. May we speak? There is a matter, perhaps connected to the recent events at Ashburn Manor, that requires clarity." Lydia hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come in, Tana, but I don't know what I can tell you." The cottage's interior was modest, cluttered with books and sheet music. A small piano stood in the corner, its keys yellowed with age. Poirot's gaze lingered on a framed photograph on the mantel, a young woman, strikingly similar to Lydia, standing beside Maurice Dubois. His heart quickened. "Mademoiselle, this photograph was the woman with Monsieur Dubois." Lydia's hands twisted together. "That's my mother, Marianne. She knew Morris years ago. They were friends before he married Elise." Poirot's mind raced. The letters in the vault, hinting at an affair. Could Marianne be the unknown woman? And your mother, where is she now? She passed away 5 years ago, Lydia said, her voice barely above a whisper. It broke her heart when Morris died. She never spoke of it, but I found letters after she was gone. Letters from him. Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings, who looked thoroughly perplexed. Letters, mademoiselle. May I see them? Lydia hesitated, then retrieved a small, wooden box from a drawer. Inside were a dozen letters, their edges worn, written in Maurice's elegant hand. Poirot read swiftly, his eyes catching phrases of longing, regret, and a promise. The locket will keep our secret safe. One letter mentioned a gift for our future, hidden where the music lives. Mademoiselle, Poirot said, his voice gentle but firm. These letters suggest your mother and Maurice shared more than friendship. The locket, it was not only for Elise, was it? Lydia's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know until after Mother died. She told me the locket was Elise's, but I found a sketch in her things, a design for it, with Morris's notes. He made it for both of them, for the child. She stopped, her breath catching. Hastings leaned forward, his voice soft. Child, you mean Celeste? Lydia shook her head. No, me. I'm their daughter. Elise never knew. Maurice wanted to protect her, to keep their marriage intact. Mother raised me alone, and when Morris died, she swore me to secrecy. But the locket, I think Dr. Renaud knew. He came to me last year, asking questions, hinting at blackmail. Poirot's mind whirled. The locket's microfilm had revealed Maurice's will, but this was a deeper secret, one that explained Renaud's obsession. Mademoiselle, did Renaud threaten you? Lydia nodded. He said he'd tell Elise, ruin Morris's memory. I didn't know what to do. Then the locket was stolen, and I thought maybe it was for the best. But I wrote to you, Monsieur Poirot, anonymously. I begged you to come to Ashburn, hoping you'd find the truth. Poirot's eyes widened. The letter to Elise, claiming a sinister presence, it was Lydia's doing. You wished to protect your mother's secret, yet expose Renaud's crime. Brave, but dangerous, mademoiselle. Hastings, still catching up, rubbed his temples. Good Lord, Poirot, this is a twist. So Lydia's the reason you came to Ashburn. None, Hastings, Poirot said, but her letter set the wheels in motion. The locket, it was a key to 2 truths: the murder of Morris and the secret of Lydia's birth. Dr. Renaud, he sought to exploit both. Lydia sank into a chair, her face pale. I didn't want Elise to suffer more. Case, she's been kind to me, treating me like family, not knowing I'm her stepdaughter. I couldn't bear to tell her. Poirot paced the small room, his cane tapping. Softly, mademoiselle, the truth, it is a heavy burden, but it can also be a gift. Elise, she has lost much, but she has gained you, if you choose to share this. Renaud's arrest ensures your safety, but the locket holds your story. 2. Lydia's eyes searched his. You think I should tell her? Poirot stopped, his expression softening. The heart of Hercule Poirot, it is not so cold as some believe. Elise, she mourns a child, but you are here, living, a piece of Morris she can cherish. It will be painful, but it may bring healing. The room fell silent, save for the ticking of a clock. Hastings cleared his throat. Poirot's right, Miss Marsh. Elise is stronger than you think, and you deserve to know her as family, not just a neighbor. Lydia nodded slowly, tears streaming down her cheeks. Tell her, but will you come with me, Monsieur Poirot? I don't know how to begin. Poirot inclined his head. Of course, mademoiselle. Hercule Poirot does not abandon those in need. The trio set out for Ashburn Manor as dusk settled over the village, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet. The manor's windows glowed warmly, and Elise was in the conservatory, arranging flowers when they arrived. She looked up, surprised. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, and Lydia, what brings you back? Poirot stepped forward, his voice calm but authoritative. Madame, we have one final matter to discuss. It is a matter of the heart and of the truth. May we sit? Elise's eyes flickered with concern, but she nodded, gesturing to the wicker chairs. Lydia sat beside her, clutching the wooden box, her hands trembling. Poirot, ever the orchestrator, began. Madame Dubois, the case of the locket. It has revealed many secrets. Dr. Renaud's crimes, the murder of your husband, the smuggling ring, all are resolved. But there is one truth, a personal one, that must now be shared. Mademoiselle Lydia has something to tell you. Lydia took a deep breath, her voice faltering at first. Elise, Madame Dubois, I've kept something from you. My mother, Marianne, she loved Maurice. They had me before you married him. I'm his daughter. It's a locket. It was for me, too, to keep our secret safe. Lisa's face paled, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. Maurice had a daughter with Marianne. Her voice was a whisper, raw with shock. Lydia nodded, tears falling. He loved you, Elise. He never wanted to hurt you. Mother raised me alone, and I only learned the truth after she died. I didn't know how to tell you. Elise's eyes drifted to the locket, still resting on the table from their earlier meeting. She touched it, her fingers tracing the sapphire. All these years, I thought Celeste was all we had. And you were here in Ashburn, so close. Poirot watched, his heart heavy. Madame, the locket, it held many truths. But this one, it is not a betrayal, it is a gift. You have a family, one you did not know you had. Lise reached for Lydia's hand, her touch tentative. You're his daughter. Okay. My stepdaughter. The word was strange on her lips, but her eyes softened. You have his smile, you know? I see it now. Lydia sobbed, and Elise pulled her into an embrace, the two women clinging to each other as years of unspoken pain dissolved. Hastings, ever sentimental, dabbed at his eyes with a handkerchief. Well, Poirot, you've done it again. Not just a case solved, but a family reunited. Poirot's smile was subdued. We Hastings, but it is their strength that makes this possible. Hercule Poirot merely opens the door. The evening passed in quiet conversation, Elise and Lydia sharing stories of Maurice, of Marianne, of the years lost to secrets. Poirot and Hastings lingered, their presence a steady anchor. As night fell, Elise insisted they stay for dinner. A simple meal of roasted chicken and apple tart, served in the Manor's dining room. The atmosphere was lighter, the weight of the past lifted by truth. As they prepared to leave, Elise pressed Poirot's hand. Monsieur, you've given me more than the locket. You've given me a daughter. How can I ever thank you? Poirot bowed. Madame, to see you both at peace, it is enough. But perhaps a small favor, tend your garden and let it bloom as your heart now will. Lydia, standing beside Elise, smiled through her tears. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, for everything. The return to the station was a quiet affair, the village now fully cloaked in night. The stars above Ashburn glittered, a silent witness to the truths uncovered. Poirot, his cane tapping softly, felt a rare contentment. The locket's mystery had led him to this: a family reunited, a village healed, a secret laid to rest. On the train to London, Hastings dozed, his newspaper forgotten. Poirot, however, remained awake, his notebook open. He wrote not of clues or deductions, but of the human heart, of Elise's grief, Lydia's courage, and the quiet beauty of a truth that mended rather than broke. As the train carried them into the night, he closed the notebook, his work complete. Ashburn's echoes had been heard, its secrets unveiled. And Hercule Poirot, the little Belgian detective, allowed himself a moment of quiet triumph, knowing that in the tapestry of human lives, he had woven a thread of hope.